All right, we're going to go ahead and get started.
Did you want to do public comment?
I'd like to call to order. We're starting the meeting, everyone, back there in the back. If you could lower your voices, please. Special City Council meeting on April 24, 2019, beginning at 8:29 p.m. Madam, roll call.
Mayor Ronnie Felder,
Here.
Chairperson Kashamba Miller Anderson,
Present.
Chair Pro Tem Julia Botel,
Here.
Councilperson Trodrick McCoy,
Here.
Councilperson Shirley Lanier,
Here.
Councilperson Douglas Lawson,
Here.
Interim City Manager Deidre Jacobs. Here. Claudia Anthony, City Clerk is present. Don Wynn, City Attorney. Here. You may proceed.
Thank you. We'll have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mayor Felder.
Thank you.
Hey, do we have any disclosures we don't have any additions, deletions, or substitutions. Do we have any disclosures by council?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
as I mentioned at last meeting, I have had conversations with Mr. Evans over the course of the last several months.
Okay, anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
same. I've had conversations with Mr. Evans over the past several months.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair.
Go
In
ahead.
addition to the previous disclosures, I met with Mr. Evans again this past weekend.
Okay, anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I met and I've spoken with Mr. Jonathan Evans.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I also spoken with Jonathan Evans.
Okay, and as far as myself, I've spoken with Mr. Evans, as I stated before, several times over the past 17, 18 months. Also met with him this past week regarding his contract. All right, can we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Councilperson Lawson,
Yes.
Councilperson Lanier,
Yes.
Councilperson McCoy,
Yes.
Pro Tem Botel,
Yes.
Chair Miller Anderson.
Yes.
Unanimous vote.
Okay, we don't have any on the consent agenda. No unfinished business, no petitions and communications for filing, no awards and presentations. Any person who would like to speak on an agenda item, please fill out a pink public comment card located in the back of the council chambers and give it to the staff prior to the item being presented to the city council for discussion. Members of the public will be given 3 minutes to speak on each regular agenda item. In no event will anyone be allowed to submit a comment card and speak on an agenda item after the resolution is read or item considered. Being that we typically start our public comments during our regular meetings when they start at 6, we usually start them around 7:30. So being that we're starting around 8:30, we will see where we are within the item around 9:30 and determine whether or not we'll go into regular public comments, but we will allow for the public comment cards for the agenda item to proceed within the next few minutes after we begin this item here. Okay, no items tabled, regular agenda, discussion and deliberation, item number 1.
Discussion and deliberation regarding the draft city manager contract terms for Mr. Jonathan Evans. Madam Chair, I know that some members of the public have turned in public comment cards. However, they have not indicated that they would like to speak on item number 1. They just have public comments read, and I do not want anyone to think that I am looking over their public comment card. So if someone wants to speak on number 1 and have not indicated on the public comment card, please come and review your public comment card so I won't be accused of.
Okay, and then we're also getting ready to close, we're closing the floor now for item 1. Once they
ma'am.
get that settled, okay. All right. So I will just start off and kind of go over as to why the special meeting
Thank you.
was called. On, I believe, the last meeting, we agreed to go into negotiations with Mr. Evans regarding his contract, and the board asked for, we typically use the chair to go ahead and do the negotiating with the attorney and with the candidate as well as their attorney. So as the items, Mr. Evans presented his terms that he would have liked to see in his contract. Typically, there are, standard items within the contract that are just there because they're just standard. So he supplied us with his terms that he would like to see. After speaking with him in regards to his terms, I asked him if there were some areas in which we could probably come down if the council should like to see it brought down, or see if we can meet somewhere in the middle. And so we did do that. Now, typically what happens is the chair and our attorney typically handle it, do the negotiations, and the council is usually only involved once the two sides have come to an agreement and it's brought to the council to vote, typically. With this being such an issue of terms that I thought were, something that I felt like the board needed to be aware. And so I chose to involve the board more than I've been involved before because, one, our board is fairly new, and two, I don't know, I was not comfortable in moving forward with an item, not really having a chance to have worked with you all for a long period of time to even know if you were okay with certain terms. Because what I didn't want to happen was for me and the attorney to do the negotiations, and then when you get here and see it for the first time, and you did not have an opportunity to get any of your questions answered. So that is the reason for the special meeting, this first special meeting. And after we discuss this, what we plan to do is go through each section of the contract. We would do a consensus on each section after we've had discussions. And then we'll do a consensus on each section on possibly Friday. And from this, I'm not sure if Ms. Nguyen had an opportunity to share with you that there's still some negotiating going on between the both sides. And so we may or may not have that special meeting on Friday because we have to give it back to Mr. Evans as well, and he has to have his attorney take a look at it. So if in the event this is not able to be worked out on both sides by tomorrow, late tomorrow, early Friday morning, the meeting may be canceled, and then it will more than likely just go into Wednesday's agenda, next Wednesday's regular agenda. Okay? And that was something, when I spoke with Mr. Evans, he was aware of his attorneys needing additional time to take a look at the contract, and so he figured at the beginning of next week is when we could probably have everything sorted out, and I figured at that time it would roll into our next meeting date anyway. So what I wanted to do is see if Ms. Nguyen had any comments that she wanted to provide in regards to this process that we're going to go. But before we do any consensus, I would like to go to public comment because when we start going through the contract and doing a consensus, and then if public comment comes up afterwards, we're not going to be able to go back and undo anything based on any comments that we may have heard. So after Ms. Nguyen, we'll have public comments for agenda item number 1, and then we'll come to the board, and then we will do some discussion on each section and give a consensus, and then we'll move on to the next section. Okay? Ms. Nguyen?
Good evening.
Good evening.
As the chair stated, we've been in negotiations with Mr. Evans. He gave us some other contract terms. I spoke with him late yesterday evening. His attorney, I reached out to her this morning, have not heard back. He is aware of that. He did say that his attorney needed additional time. He's not sure. He did not give me a time when she would return my call or provide additional language that he was looking for. So again, we are not sure about Friday's meeting because of that. he and I had some discussion last night about some of the terms. I was trying to get an understanding of what he was looking for. And as we go through, I'll be able to point some of those things out to you.
So as I stated, we will not be voting on the contract at all. We'll just come to a consensus in each section, and then when we have that second meeting, whether it's Friday or next Wednesday, then we'll do the vote on that, on the contract.
Right. And, I've reached out to most of you via telephone, all of you via telephone and email. So we've had communication. Everyone should be on the same page. All of you should be on the same page.
In terms of what we've received and all of that.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions from the board regarding that process? All right, Madam Clerk, we're going to go ahead to public comments for item number 1.
Cindy March.
Good evening again, councils.
Good evening.
I tell you, you all talking about bringing Jonathan Evans back, whether he come back or don't come back, it doesn't make me a difference. But how you gonna pay somebody $190,000 to leave the city, then you're gonna bring him back for $220,000, and you have department heads has brought $11.5 million into this city doing her job, and some of you all like Botel and Kashama, you're still around here throwing rocks and hiding your hand and defaming my niece's character. And the reason why it's personal with me, because I carry the same last name as Lady March, and I'm her aunt. She's been fighting for her bike pay. Mr. Sherman, I would like to turn to you. You don't have to rebuttal, but I would like for the council to rebuttal to me. Why can't she get bike pay, but you find it all right to bring somebody back here, whether they fired them wrongly or however they fired them? Don't hold personal vendettas against your other employees that do good for the city of Revere Beach. I haven't came to the last 2 meetings because, see, I don't want to get stuck on stupid. That's what I'm not going to get stuck on. But what you're not going to continue to do is defame an employee character that represent the city of Revere Beach. And you, Kashama, you, Botel, supposed to be representing the council board. You have to set an example. It comes from the heart. It comes from being fair. It comes from having integrity. And both of you all do not have that right now. And right now, I'm trying to be respectful. I'm trying to be professional. I don't care what kind of degree you have and you don't have. You can get a person off the street and clean him up. And if he do the right thing and be fair, he going to know how to treat an employee. I am so sick of my niece almost about to get killed on the highway with anxiety attack because of the way she's being treated here at the city of Revere Beach. Why don't you all grasp her and find out what's the personal vendetta with you all and clean up the problem? Whether she be here today or tomorrow, she don't broke history. She the first black female building official. And if she wanted to go back to building her homes, she can't go back because you all don't defame her character. Who's running this city? You, Wanda Moore, and Botel. And you know what? It's going to backfire on you. Trust what I'm telling you. It might not come to you directly, but it'll come to somebody that you really love. And you'll wonder why it's happening to you. Come on, we got to do better as a team. We got to do better as a city. This is a city where we love to work and play in. Let's pull together as a team. It hurts me. And it's personal with me. I'm not going to lie to you. It's personal because that's my niece I helped raise. And yeah, she has a past, but her story is somebody else's glory.
Thank you.
Felicia Wilder. John Miller. Erica Davis. John Miller, Erica Davis, Bonnie Larson.
I really want to talk, John Miller, 1290 Manor Drive. I want to talk about the contract. I want to talk about Jonathan. But listen, I worked in the construction industry my entire life. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is not to be disrespectful to anyone. But I keep hearing this $11.5 million was brought in. It's brought in because people were building things and they come to the city. We don't have a salesman. There isn't a salesman that works in the construction industry anywhere. I mean, like 40-some years I worked in that. So what I'm trying to tell you, I don't know where the $11.5 million comes in, because if you would have put an addition on your house, you're going to bring the plans and you're going to pay for it. That's it. Nobody's going to you. It's not a salesman. Now let's get on to Jonathan. Let's start about the $190,000. He got $90,000 out of that. This is the same man that sat out of work for 7 months. Not only sat out of work, but talk about his name. His name was tarnished. He couldn't get a job. I mean, people looked and thought, well, why is he fired? Okay? Now, if we want to talk about that, let's talk about a few other things. What about the $50,000 we had to pay to Channel 5? What about the lawyer? What did we pay our lawyers in that? Nobody told us that. We don't know anything about that. And I don't know anything about Mr. DeGraff and Wright, but they said that he had filed a lawsuit. But yet he was hired after that. These are all the things that have been thrown up about Jonathan Evans. But this is small potatoes. Me as a taxpayer, and I pay a nice chunk of taxes, all right, in my home, I want to know about the $1.1 million. Where's that $1.1 million talked about? What about the 70 people, supposedly, that got medical coverage that we paid for, that we were told, you can't know who they are? Well, guess what? I don't need to know who they are. I need to know, are they paying the money back? That's it. I don't need their names. So throw around the figures, throw around Jonathan Evans, talk about that he took $190,000. He didn't take. And if anything, maybe we should ask the people that fired him to pay the $190,000. Thank you.
Thank you.
Erica Davis, Barney Larson, Norma Duncan.
Erica Davis, Riviera Beach. Guys,
Good evening.
can we just please move on? Let's give this man what he deserves, because he deserves everything in the contract and some. And let's move on to city business. We have development. We have small businesses we need revenue in the city. We don't have any more time for this small talk and this ignorance that keeps occurring over and over again. It's not about Shalandra March. It's about getting us a city manager to run the city so we can move on to big business and something important besides all the same ignorant stuff we've been talking about for the past 18 months. Let's move on. Guys, please, let's move on. Figure out the contract, whatever you're going to do, and let's move on. We are tired of hearing the same old dirty dog going down the street. Please, let's move on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bonnie Larson, Norma Duncan, Amon Israel.
Bonnie Larson, I hope this draft contract is online. It probably is, because I just got it now, so I'm trying to quickly read. I like reading contracts, but I'm trying to really quickly read this one. Also, thank you, Ms. Kashamba Anderson, for speaking with the rest of the council. This has never happened before. Usually the chair makes a decision. I remember the last time we had a decision made, and the council was in total opposition to it, but they had no choice because they elected that one person to make the negotiation. That's not right. So Ms. Kashamba Miller Anderson, you're doing the right thing. Everybody up here will deal with the city manager, so everybody should have their input, and that's what you did. Thank you for being authentic in the way you do things. Very, very quickly, I read this too quickly. A couple of the things I saw here was the gas money per month. We want to get into this, $500. The council people get $750. Council people have full-time jobs. They're probably not doing city business during 9 to 5, but this position would be doing traveling during the time period. We need to talk about the money there as far as gas money for the council and for this, but why is he getting less than the council? That doesn't make sense to me when it's his full-time job. Cell phone, I didn't understand that, $75 a month. Why doesn't everybody just have a cell phone? I don't know why that was even an issue there. Oh, this was interesting. Page 7. Page 7. It said basically that if he was accused of anything or had done anything maliciously, or no, what? I'm doing too quickly here. Item A. Okay, the city shall not be liable for any acts or omissions of the city manager committed while acting outside the course and scope of his agreed duties or committed a bad faith or with malicious purpose, or in a manner exhibiting wanton and willful disregard of human rights, safety, or property. In such instances, the city manager shall reimburse the city for any legal fees. Did that happen at the last council? No. We defended Terrence Davis. We paid big bucks in attorney's fees. And he goes there and admits that he was wrong. Mr. Evans is saying if he does something wrong, he'll pay it back. Okay. Page 7, relocation fees. I heard a few people grumbling about that. I have no idea what it costs to relocate. We've relocated other people, I'm sure, and anybody else who comes into the city would be relocated. I have no idea if $10,000 is fair, not fair, whatever. So I haven't moved recently. So I'm going to take some time to read this, but thank you, Ms. Kashamba, for involving everyone. And he will do this. We are really in dire straits in the city. And Mr. Evans will do a gargantuan job. He is walking into a hornet's nest here. When he left, it was bad. When he's coming back, it's even worse. This would take you would need 4 or 5 people to do what he's going to have to do when he gets here. So give him whatever he wants. Delray Beach is paying $244 for their city manager. So we know what this guy can do. We know he's a hard worker. We know he does the right thing. He'll put us back on the map. Whatever he wants, give it to him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Norma Duncombe, Amon Israel, Mary Brown.
Norma Duncombe.
Good evening.
Okay, I listened to you say that all of you, did you talk with him as individually? I mean, I'm concerned about the Sunshine Law in terms of your communication with, you did observe that, in terms of your communication with Mr. Evans. Your conversations with him and talking about the contract, it was a little, it seems as if, were you talking as a group, or did you talk individually, or how did this work out in terms of negotiating the contract? I'm concerned about that, but this is what I'm really concerned about. Based on the charter, the city manager serves at the pleasure of the council. And here, when he left, they made a decision to let him go. They also made the decision to reimburse him $190,000. You're saying you're going to bring him back, but there's no discussion about that money. Now, when you bring him back, if there is a termination, because it says here he can be terminated with cause, without cause, do we go back through that again, another $190,000? I mean, has that been well discussed? I'm concerned about that, because here you're saying you have the right, based on this contract, to terminate him without cause. Okay, the next thing is that if you, the $190,000, I didn't hear anything about that, and I would like to know what decisions was made in terms of the $190,000, because that contract that he signed, or the agreement that he had, was that he would not come back here. How do you change that? What is the attorney's decision about that? Because you have left the city open to actually bring a suit against the city, because the two of you are now deciding that he could come back without repaying that $190,000, which I thought could have been better used for children or things that we need in the city. Also, if the 3 years of the contract, is that the normal thing for city managers in this city? Because I thought it was, he served at the pleasure of the council, which meant it would be on a yearly basis. Is this something new that you've added to the contract? Was it in the other contract that he had 3 years or 4 years or whatever?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I typically will not address any comments, but I do want to address the sunshine issue. and maybe I wasn't clear, we did not have conversations with each other. The conversations that they may have had with Mr. Evans was just the meet, and we explained that during a couple of our meetings, I believe, indicating that Mr. Evans, before he came, he would like to meet with everyone just to talk about his vision, what he would like to do. That type of conversation is what everyone individually did. We were not together when we met. And in terms of the contract negotiations, it was just myself and Ms. Wynn speaking with Mr. Evans. I have never had a conversation with them. That is why the special meeting was called, so that we could have this discussion. I'm only addressing the sunshine, and we can talk about the money afterwards if someone has an answer for that.
Amon Israel, Mary Bram, Dolores Williams.
Good evening, Council,
evening.
Chair, Mayor. My name is Amon Yisrael, Riviera Beach, Florida. Jonathan Evans is returning to Riviera Beach for the purpose of restoring a positive image to Riviera Beach, restoring the confidence with the residents that our government will be working for us, installing a sense of concern and purpose with our greatest resources, our employees, restoring the respect, confidence with the businesses, county, state, and other local agencies, and public at large, that the city of Riviera Beach is competent, truthful, representing the residents to the best way possible, reviewing and organizing the city's management and administrative structure to increase productivity, better efficiencies, identify, prioritize, and develop long-term financial addressing the city's infrastructure, police station, library, fire department, public works, city hall, new water plant, improve the competency of our city by recruiting and hiring the best people for the department heads that are vacant. Just to name a few of the issues that must be addressed by him. Mayor Ronnie Felder ran a campaign slogan. It was just not a slogan, but it was a fact. Our city must be restored, revitalized, and rebuild our city. Also, we cannot forget our children. There's a lot of conversation I've been hearing about this money. If I'm not mistaken, I think Jonathan tried to negotiate a settlement of $60-some thousand. The previous council denied it. He took him to court. So if anybody owed the money, I think the council who took him to court. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary Bram, Dolores Williams, Sammy Brown.
Miss Mayor Bram, Riviera Beach.
Good evening.
I would just like to say the $190,000, $114,000, that was what was paid for Mr. Evans, and he wasn't even in a servant's package. The $76,000 was paid for the attorney. It is others that have worked in this city here that have been paid. We must be fair and collect all of our monies if we're going to collect them from Mr. Evans. Also, I would like to say, no offense to the attorney Wins. Her contract states a guaranteed 2-year contract. And if she is to be removed from that seat, she would have to occupy a seat of equal pay for her. Mr. Evans is the city manager. Mr. Evans will walk into a haunted nest in this city here. You as a board, it would take you actually 3 years too to accomplish some of the things that you need to accomplish in this city here. Mr. Evans' contract, give him those 3 years. The $500 for car allowance, If you make up that difference in that base salary of $220,000, that's agreeable. The man will certainly work more than 40 hours. He always has and always will. So the stipulation is 40 hours, but a man like Mr. Evans, he works beyond his pay. The children loves him. The seniors love him. I do not come parlaying on others, but if we are to balance this system out here, we must have equal justice here. Mr. Evans did nothing wrong. The lump sum for moving for $10,000, that's fine. Corporations pays their CEOs that type of money for relocation. It's nothing wrong with that. Madeira Beach, Ms. Bram say thank you for seeing a good, just man that went in there from the time that you had him until the time that he would make a decision. I would leave that up to him. But I would like to say thank you, Madeira Beach, for seeing the worth and the caliber of this man that helped you all move forward. And only good things has been exemplified within Mr. Evans. We know he's a good man. The children loves him. He sits at the park with the children. He attends every play, every event. Who wouldn't want somebody like that? As much chaos that we have in this city here with our youth of today. You stand up here and you parlay about our children. Well, let's put a face on the city as well as with our children here. This contract should be approved and it should be moved on. We need to move forward. Like I said, take that anchor out of the water and let's move this ship. Miss Deidre Jacob, you look good sitting up there.
Thank you.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Ms.
And let's
Graham.
move this ship here forward. There's nothing wrong with this contract.
Thank
This
you.
man would totally exceed this contract here.
Thank you, Ms. Bram.
You need those 3 years. Mr. Evans needs those 3 years. Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
I intend to give you 3 more if you do good toward this city. Thank you.
Dolores Williams, Sammy Brown, Madeline Irving.
To the council,
Good evening. State your name, please.
the citizens of
Ms.
Riverville
Williams, state your name, please.
Dolores Williams. I'm up
Good
here.
evening.
And I hear so much about Mr. Evans. I met him once. I met him with you once at one of the residents when they needed some help for the house, right? Miss Felicia Wilder. But I'm here, I'm not, I don't know what the contract is saying and what they're saying. But me, as I first got up and said, it was a new council. You had other applicants. Mr. Armand got up here and read his resume. Did y'all read all the rest of the application that filed for that and for the IT person? They put it on record. He read everything about what he's doing. So how we know how good and how qualified the other people's was? Do we know that? Do y'all know that? I remember Miss they say they, I hope I say your name right. You say they gave you a list of people, and they say it was about 11. You only had, what, 5 or 7? You looked at it. They say they read the other applicants. They was very, very, listen, I meant it very, impressed of the applicants that was coming in. Mr. Jonathan, he can come back. Okay, he say he did all these things, Ms. Anderson. You say you've been corresponding with him for the past 17 months. That's how long he's been gone. You had to vote, should have met with him and talked on their own, but you insisted, you and Bartels, insisted that they each learn it for themselves. That's good, they did that. But it's more, seems like more influence on the leadership of that council than I want y'all to stand for yourself. If you don't think it's something that's right because the leader, chairman and co-chairman say change you, I've seen you say something different. And when they speak up, they cause you to change your mind that 5 yes, unanimous vote. Be your own man and own woman. And you know it take a man or woman to admit that they was wrong with their integrity than to keep holding on and don't say anything. And remember, you say, oh, don't bring that God in here. Don't bring that in here. Or they told me, Miss Williams, don't you come back over there no more, because they're going to turn a deaf ear to you. They don't want you up there getting to say, I know that's not true, because some of these people back here, if you hear some of the stuff they're saying, it's awful. Want to get up here talking about dogs and fleas, calling me a W, calling me I'm a witch. I don't have to be no witch. I don't have to do nothing to nobody. I only come over to speak what my heart I feel for this city and for y'all. I want y'all to be for yourself. If you hear some of the stuff they do out there and be saying, they be saying some terrible, terrible things to us that get up here if we not with Mr. Evans. That's not right.
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Not right. They shouldn't be like that.
Thank
Y'all
you.
think about it. They saying that. And
Thank
you're talking
you.
about people suing and Mr. Evans paying all this money back. Did he want to sue? Didn't he have to pay for his lawyer if he wanted to sue?
Thank you, Ms. Williams.
Sammy Brown, Madeline Irving.
Good evening, Council. Sammy
Good
Brown. For a second, I just want to talk about the reality of the situation. I don't even want to mention the building official tonight because, as you know, before she even became employed with the city of Riviera Beach, she wasn't qualified to be a city manager. A building official, but she knew people, so that's how she got in. But Council, I just want to let you guys know, you're always going to have haters, and that's that. Okay, whatever you say.
Stay focused up to
Have
the
you,
day it's up here.
I'm sorry, it was everywhere, but have you seen the list of accomplishments of Jonathan Evans? And I'm talking about you need a poster board to even write down half of them. We need Jonathan Evans back, and we're going to get Jonathan Evans back, and that's just that. And I just want to thank Ms. Deidre for all, City Manager Deidre for all of her hard work as of right now, because we need somebody who's going to come in here and not play the radio, because it's too much crap going on, excuse my language, that we need to nip in the bud. And that's just how it's going to be. We have a new council, and we're going to exploit our new council and make sure that these things happen. And everybody's talking, I'm really sick and tired of hearing about these $190,000. This man was unemployed for 7 months, it was, I'm pretty sure. And $190,000, he had to move, he had to relocate, he had to take care of his family, he had to feed his family. And I don't know about you guys, but $20 a night isn't going to feed a house full of people. I just want to thank you, Council, for being so nice and generous, because, our past Council, all this back and forth with other people, that would have never happened. We would have had arguments and conversations, and people are talking about, they're out there. I really don't care if you don't like Mr. Evans or not. The reality of the situation is we're going to get him back, whether you like it or not. And I do care about everyone's personal opinion and their personal objectives or whatever you want to call them. But we do have to still face reality. This man wasn't a bad man. He did nothing wrong to even get fired from the city of Riviera Beach. Name one thing he did wrong and I'll sit down. Exactly. But Jonathan Evans was a good man. He was a qualified man, and he was a good man. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Madeline Irving.
Madeline Irving.
Good evening.
Good evening, Riviera Beach. I just want to say, just bring Mr. Evans back. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Madam Chair, that completes public comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. One thing I did want to share, I'm not certain, but I do want to say what we had here for some of the terms, and that we did negotiate some of them from where they are. One of them was regarding the tentative start date to be about 65 days after the contract execution. That part will not change. There was a request with the 3-year term for possibly having the first year guaranteed, and the second year would be guaranteed after the evaluation after we do an evaluation and he has a successful and effective evaluation of the first year. The third year would be guaranteed based on the second year's evaluation. So those were some of the items that had not reached to the contract yet. So what I'm reading to you now is what he initially sent and what we kind of went through together. But what you have in front of you is where we are now, okay? And as Ms. Nguyen mentioned before, we're still doing negotiations on a couple of the items, and Ms. Nguyen will point that part out once we get to it. The salary initially $240, and he did give a comparison of the other municipalities and what they were paying their city managers. So he listed Belglade as $235,000, Boca Raton $260,000, Delray $245,000, Jupiter $215,000, Palm Beach Gardens $232,000, Wellington $225,000, and West Palm Beach $233,000. And I believe Ms. Nguyen were looking to get contracts from those municipalities as well. I'm not sure if she got that yet or not, but if you want to just keep that in mind. But the amount that we have in the contract that you have is where we're working from today. And the relocation initially, the payment due upon contract execution, so basically upfront once the contract is executed, was initially $13,000. So the amount that we have in the contract now is where we are, and we can work from that. The other parts, upon execution of the contract, Mr. Evans will receive the maximum accrual per city policy for vacation and sick time for a period of 3 years and can be paid, well, that would be modified. It would be the 1 year, and then the second, and then the third, but at the beginning of each of those years is what it was initially. That is something I think is different in the contract, or at least we've had conversation, and we'll talk about that once we get there. There's a section where he did ask, should in order to prepare for the transition, possibly working as a consultant, and that part is in the contract as well, should we utilize him during the time of the transition period so that he's working with Ms. Jacobs in terms of transitioning to come over? That's what we talked about, and I think it's in the agreement too. So you'll see it when we get into the agreement. Anything else, Ms. Nguyen, to point out that we discussed initially, and before we go into the contract?
The only other thing is probably the difference in the retirement plan. If you
Okay.
recall.
So initially, it was 18% of the city manager's salary will be deposited into a brokerage/money market/investment account of the city manager's choosing and will be fully vested on the first day of employment, which was similar. He compared it to Ms. Nguyen's contract, but it would not be a 457. So that was what it was initially. In the contract, I think it was massaged a little bit, so we'll discuss that when we get to the contract.
And the only other thing, since you mentioned my contract, was the assurance of possibly being placed in the event that his services as city manager were no longer required or needed, necessary, that he would be placed in another position in the city, and that's some discussion that we need to have as well.
Okay, and that part is not in here yet, but there's an area that it is to be added to.
And he's aware of that it's not in, that's not in there. The guarantee language that you discussed regarding the second and third year, we're waiting on his attorney for that language as well. And we also are working out the retirement language as it relates to the brokerage account.
Okay. Okay, so when we start moving down throughout that, then just make sure you chime in so that we can have that
Yes.
discussion on that as well. So those were some of the items that he sent over initially before we got into the negotiating of the different terms. What you all have in before you is where we are right now. As Ms. Nguyen just stated, there are some terms that are still being worked out even though it is here, and she'll point that out. So when we have our discussion, we'll be able to be aware of that. And the idea is to hopefully be able to, if we can, get through this and have as much discussion as we need to tonight, that when we have the second meeting, it would mainly just be a vote unless there are some items that have been negotiated beyond tonight, where she has to get back with with his attorney. And if that's the case, on that second meeting night, we would have that discussion about those items only, and we won't reopen any of the other items we've already settled on tonight. And then we'll move into the vote from there on the second meeting. All right. Any questions about what we're going to do? Anything, Ms. Nguyen?
No.
Ms. Jacobs? Okay. All right. So basically, the agreement starts off, as it would typically read. So some of these I just won't go into other than the section. So Section 1, which is the employment, looking at Section 1B, the city's employment of Jonathan Evans as city manager shall be effective 65 days from the date of execution of this agreement for an indefinite term and for no less than 3 years, with a 3-year option to renew upon mutual agreement of the city council and city manager. So for that part, Ms. Nguyen, can you give an update as to where we are with that one?
It is as stands. This is what Mr. Evans requested, the 3 years. You should know that the charter states that the city manager is to have an indefinite term, which is why in his prior contract there was no term. However, this still does not make it, the language, the way I worded it, doesn't make it a definite term. It's just an indefinite term for no less than 3 years, which means that he can be here for longer than 3 years. And so
Okay.
it's still indefinite.
Okay, but with this particular item here, this is where, well, first of all, the effective date would not be the 65 days from the date of execution. I'm sorry, yes, that will be,
Yes,
but.
I know what section you're talking about, but
Yeah, I'm
yeah, this
talking about the
section.
30. I think I'm talking about the 30
Right.
section. But for this is where we would probably put in the 1-year guarantee, have that discussion, or would that be going into another section?
This is probably where it will be, but I have to see it. I have not seen that language at all.
Okay.
I've just had the conversation with you. I needed to talk to him, and I really needed to talk to his attorney or actually see the language, and I haven't.
Okay, so, counsel, with this section here, I think this probably will be one of the sections that we'll have to have another discussion on, but for tonight, I think we could at least try to figure out if I do want to put on the record that although the charter states that there are no certain terms and that he works for the pleasure of the board, going back, we looked at about, I don't know how many past city manager contracts going back about 30 years, and every one of them had a term. Some may have been 1 year, some may have been 2 years, some may have been 3 years, but all of them had a term except for Mr. Evans.
That's correct.
Okay, so going back for 30 years, everyone had 2 years or 3 years in their contract, and it, could be renewable. I mean, we had 4 or 5, we had maybe, I know, at least one city manager that was renewed. He had about 5 or 6 different contracts in there because he was here for a long period of time. But he even had a term. It was, I think, 2 years or something like that. So I just want you to keep note that although that charter says there's no indefinite terms identified, but for the precedent has been to set a term, and the only time they chose to follow the charter was with Mr. Evans for the past 30 years. So that part there for tonight, I guess we could, identify how many years would you like for it to be. The only part that still would be up in the air, so we will still come back and talk about this section, is about the 1-year guarantee or the 2-year or the 3-year guarantee or whatever. If we do 2 years, it would be the 1-year guarantee, 2-year guarantee. That part we still have to figure out, and she's waiting on to speak to his attorney. So if you all have any comments as to how long you would like to see the contract for?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm fine with the 3 years, but my concern is the 65 days. Could we say effective no more than 65 days? If something were to happen in Madeira Beach that required him to leave earlier, could we not acquire his services earlier than 65 days? This, excuse me, I'm sorry. This limits us to having access to his services 65 days from the date of execution of the agreement. I would prefer to have something that says no more than 65 days.
Well, I will share with you that this was his request, to have the, remember, we have Ms. Jacobs for up to 120 days.
Right.
And he asked for the 65 days, not under 65.
In that case, could we, you said something about a transition, so is that coming up in a separate section of
Yeah,
this?
that's
Okay,
it,
so-
towards the
So
end.
we could use him as a consultant prior to the execution of the contract. We could have him come if we,
Hold on, do you remember offhand which one that is, Ms.?
Yes, it's on,
22, section 22, page 8.
Oh.
So if you just take a look at that, and we'll talk about it when we get
Okay.
there, but that may answer your question. But
Okay.
the language came from him to be 65 days from 65 days after the contract is executed.
as long as it doesn't limit us in the event that he's available more quickly than that.
Okay. All right, anyone
So-
else?
if I can address
Yes,
that.
go ahead.
It would limit you, however, you still have the consulting, if that's the consensus of the council, you still have that section, I think it's 22, but that would limit you if you don't change
Well,
this.
Madam
But
Chair.
again, it was his first bullet point, tentative start date, 65 days after contract execution.
Well, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Could we ask that he be amenable to saying no more than?
Sure, yes.
You're saying to,
In other words, if something happens in Madeira Beach and
I
he's
understand,
yeah,
I
so
understand, but what are you saying for it to say?
shall be effective
No more
no
than.
more than 65 days.
Okay. Council, anyone have comments on this section?
Madam
And-
Chair,
Yes.
the 3 years with the 3-year option, I know we don't have the language yet on the 1-year guarantee, but in the event that Mr. Evans was terminated with or without cause, would we be obligated to his salary for that 3-year period?
If he's terminated without cause, the statute only requires or allows you to pay him 20 weeks of severance without cause.
So, Madam Chair, the timing on the contract then, what is the purpose of the contract if there's no guarantees in there? Being that if we terminate his contract, that he's only going to get the severance regardless of if he has a 2-year or 3-year contract?
Ms. Nguyen?
I don't think he's anticipating being terminated. I think that the 3 years will give him some assurances, and
Well-
that's what he's looking for.
He didn't anticipate it the first time as well, so that's why I'm assuming that now there's a difference between no term and he put it in here now. So I want to be clear that in the event that we're not locked in for this period, in the event something does happen where we have to go back into a similar situation, and I'm hoping that we don't have to go in that direction, but we need to protect the city. So a 3-year contract is kind of extensive based on every contract I've looked at has been about 2 years for the last 10 years from the city of Riviera Beach.
Ms. Ruth Jones's contract was for 3 years. I think a few of hers were for 3 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Madam Chair?
Mhm.
I had Ms. Ruth Jones' contract, and every single one of them was for 2 years.
Was for 2 years?
2009 through 2011, 2013 through 2015. 2015, we extended it for 6 months, and then 2015 to 2017.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Attorney Wayne, even if we do a 3-year contract, we fire him without cause, we're only responsible for 20 weeks of pay?
20 weeks of severance, yes.
So it doesn't make a difference, does it? I mean, we're not paying him for that. If he started a year and we had to let him go, we don't have to pay him for another 2 years, right?
That's correct. You would pay, if it was without cause, you would pay him 20 weeks of severance.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
But I believe that's why the terms of the contract are put as a 3-year basis, so that in the event that it's without cause, or, I'm sorry, with cause, and there's a suit that goes into place, or we have to fight this agreement, we'd be obligated for that 3-year contract. So if we lock into a 3-year contract and anything happens, then we're going to be obligated to pay Mr. Evans for 3 years.
Go ahead.
Unless it's without cause, then you're only obligated or allowed pursuant to the statute to pay 20 weeks. If it's with cause and there's some litigation, then you may be correct that whatever the balance of the term is, he may be able to seek compensation for that. But again, I think that the 3 years for him is that he wants an assurance that he's going to have some stability.
But that does not equate to you will get paid all of those 3 years if we choose to fire you without cause.
That's correct.
So, as she's saying, it's only the 20 weeks that you could pay out.
Sorry, I was looking for clarity. You said if without cause, he's only obligated for those 20 weeks. But his contract is a 3-year contract.
Right.
So without cause, couldn't he come back and sue the city?
The statute only allows 20 weeks without, if you terminate someone without cause, 20 weeks of severance. And
So
it's just so you know, that part of it is the same language that's in my contract. It's in probably everyone's contract throughout the state of Florida because that is the law of the state.
So again, I ask, what is the issue with doing a 2-year or a 3-year if there's no concern?
The term is totally up to the council.
Okay. So
I don't have an opinion on
you
the term.
suggest you would like to see 2 years instead of 3 years?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Do we have anyone else that would like to see the 2 years? Because this section here, we're doing a consensus. We're not voting on anything tonight per se, although a consensus is, we got to come to an agreement on it. So Mr. Lawson is asking for the 2, not provided, but we won't be locked into this part of it yet because we don't have the language, but in terms of how many years, that part we can settle. So, Mr. McCoy or Ms. Lanier, do you have any suggestions on the number?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I actually was going to say the same thing. I prefer 2 years for a couple of reasons. And, this is a large agreement, so let me start by saying, we only got this last night, so I technically only had about a few hours to review it today because we had a whole list of events at League of Cities. But my reservation is, the first thing is, I didn't know anything about the first-year guarantee because that's not in the draft. And if that's something that's right now being negotiated with the other side, I personally have a problem with it. And I got to go back to Mr. Lawson's 2-year point, but I have a problem with the first year being guaranteed because I have a problem with the salary. And it seems like if they're going right now back to discuss the first year being guaranteed that he gets paid regardless of whether he's terminated or not, I have a problem that we're paying him $220,000 of just the salary, not all of the other benefits and the other items that way exceed, that almost nearly doubles.
So we're going to get to the salary.
But let me finish, Madam Chair, because the issue is, it's not just about the first year contract guarantee. The issue is, it seems as if this is now a new term, the 1-year guarantee that I only heard about here. I don't agree with a 1-year guarantee.
Well, see, this was the challenge with having the meeting and not getting that part completed, which is why I stated that part is still up for discussion. So if that one is tied with your salary concern, then those 2 we could leave alone until it's negotiated, and then on the second meeting, we would have had enough time to have a conversation. We would have had the conversation, and then with the attorneys, and then on that second meeting, you all could come then and say whether or not you want to do that or not. So we don't have to decide on that section, the salary or the term one, if you don't want to do that tonight.
Follow up.
Yes.
I would certainly like to do that, and here's why.
Okay.
Because when you started off, you ran down a list of cities that it's comparable to, and just from the fundamental start of where at least I was hoping we were going, I really have to disagree with everything that you said about Belgrade, Boca Raton, Delray.
That was from Mr. Evans.
Right,
I just
but-
read off what he gave.
But if, and you know, this is going to be very difficult because I've spent about 3 hours, every bit of 3 hours trying to look this up. But if you're negotiating on the members of this board's behalf and along with the city attorney, I would have liked it that we had time to kind of really see this through, because the city of Belgrade, which was the first one that was named, the city manager there is at 235. But that doesn't speak to, their operating budget is $24 million. We're triple that, right? But the other problem is that city manager has been there for over 20 years. So we can't start comparing apples to oranges. And I can tell you, there are some other concerns with those other cities. We have population concerns. So before we start all of this conversation about whether the first year is guaranteed, I think that hinges upon what the actual salary amount is from the very beginning. Because if he says he wants guaranteed first year and he's getting 180, cool. I may be open to it. But if he's saying we should be guaranteed paying him $220 million based on salaries of others, 220,000 based on salaries of other cities, they have different populations. Belgrade is not even a coastal city. And some of these people, like the town of Wellington, their operating budget is way ahead of ours. So, I have a first off problem with the salary. So that's what I wanted to address first, because that hinges, that drives all these other factors, Madam Chair.
Okay.
And that's why, the 2 year thing I definitely agree with, but, I don't even know how we can begin to address this. And that's why I certainly, and let me please preface this, by no means am I trying to undermine whatever you went into or second guess it. I was just curious as to how you arrived at 220. Was there a basis that you were relying on, or was this solely what he started with?
And I want to be very clear, again, at the beginning, what I read, that was what Mr. Evans came to the table with. I said, I don't think we need to start off that high. We figured out amount that you could come and start with, but that's exactly why we're having this meeting, because I was not going to make that decision alone. I wanted you all to give the information that you're giving now. So this 220 was down from the 240, but if you are wanting to bring it down further, that's why we're here. That's exactly why we're here. Otherwise, we could have went on and went with whatever we decided and just brought it, but I was trying to avoid that avenue. I wanted you all to have this conversation.
Well, Madam Chair, members, let me say this. We have to start at salary, because
And that's fine.
if we don't, if you look into the contract, the FRS and also the deferred compensation retirement program is all contingent upon the salary, and those are huge amounts. So you can
So let me ask you this. So is there a certain order of the sections you want to go through first? If you all want to give input on that, we can do that. That's why we're here.
Madam Chair? In addition to the comments by Councilman McCoy, I also have concern that we don't have all the information for this contract, because there's other parts that we're still waiting on, and we're going to be having discussion, deliberation about parts of this, and Mr. Evans still has pieces that we haven't even addressed yet. So to have a special...
The only couple of, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mr.
Go ahead,
Lawson. Point out the two sections, because as I said, we have that second meeting. We don't have to talk about the major ones if you feel that is going to impact your decision on where you go with some of the rest of them. Just speak out and say which ones you would like to have a conversation on the second meeting. And then by that time, as Ms. Nguyen did before, when she sent you all the contract on yesterday, she did reach out and speak to you individually to bring you up to date to where we were with the contract, so that you didn't get here and just see the contract and had no explanation. So I know she reached out to everyone. I don't know if she spoke to everyone, but I know she reached out to everyone to have a conversation with you before you came here. And then also, like I said, if she can point out the couple of sections that we're still waiting on the language for, those could be the two that we could wait until the second meeting. That between now and then, she would have had a conversation with you, and so when you come on that second meeting, you'll know exactly what it is. So like I said, we don't have to discuss certain sections tonight if you don't want to. So please do not feel you have to come to a consensus on every section if you're not comfortable with something. Just say that this is the section that we want to keep out. If section 2 ties in with section 7 and section 9, then 2, 7, and 9 we will not discuss tonight. You'll have more conversation with Ms. Nguyen between now and then by that time, she's had the language from the other side, and then when we come to second meeting, everything will be in there. And that's exactly why it says draft, because everything in here we can change if we want. It would just go back to the other side for them to take a look at, and then we would go back and forth. So please don't feel that any of this in here is in stone. That's why it has draft, and that's why we're here to have a conversation. So let me know what it is that, if you want to take out section 2A, which is the amount, we can hold that part off. And if you want to take off section 1B, which is about the term, we can hold off on that section as well tonight.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'll defer if you go ahead. I've
No,
already
I
spoken.
think probably, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I think what we can do is, there are 23 sections in this contract. I think that what we could do is that, because there's not all the information as Councilman McCoy stated, if we can go through each section and say, are there any issues with this section? If there are no issues with it, then we can make a consensus on it and we can move on.
That's exactly what I wanted to do.
Okay,
Yes,
very
yes. So with that, go ahead.
Madam Chair, thank you.
Yes.
Maybe I'm in the minority, but I would pay that man the sun, the moon, and the stars to come back. And I think that if we have to give him a 1-year guarantee and a 3-year contract, I'm fine with that. I think this community has spoken loud and clear that they want Jonathan Evans back. They want him to help us get this city out of turmoil. They want to help us make this a city on the rise. And if it takes us paying for the vast experience that he has, and I mean, he may not have had 20 years here, but he certainly did more in 6 months than anybody did in a long time, it seems to me. And we have set a precedent of giving our city attorney a guarantee of 2 years. If we are, if we've already set that, I was not alone in voting against that, because at the time I didn't think that was a good thing to do. However, we've done it, and so we've set a precedent. And I think that Mr. Evans is worth, I would give him a 30-year contract. We'd be happy to have him stay here for 3 years. We'd be lucky to have him stay for at least 3 years. And so that's how I feel on this subject, and we can move on as far as I'm concerned.
All right. So looking at section 1A, that is pretty standard, it's just his name, talking about the terms established and the duties. Everyone okay with that? Some of this stuff is just standard language, so we won't probably change some of it, but section 1A, everyone is good with that? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Section 1B, which is regarding the effective 65, the contract is effective 65 days from the date of execution. That section you want to hold off on and bring it back when we come back the second meeting.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would just like, just to make sure we're completely clear, at what point or any time would we be obligated for the term of this contract to be paid out if Mr. Evans is terminated?
It depends. Again, the answer is the same, that if it's without cause, it's the 20 weeks of severance. And if it's with cause and he files a lawsuit, that could be the possibility. The court is going to look at the term. But I can't tell you at what point. I can't answer that.
So to be locked into a term, and if the court decides, we'll be obligated to pay this entire contract, based on whatever the judge may say or may not say. So to have a longer contract is obligating us to more of a penalty and fee if the judge does rule against us.
That's a possibility.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
but I think
Wait,
the
hold
issue,
on, Mr. Lawson, are you done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
the issue was he got fired with cause that couldn't be proved the first time. So I don't blame him for coming in with the contract. The thing is, you still have the ability to fire him without cause. The board has the ability. You don't have to come up with a reason to fire him if you want to fire him. The thing is, if you fire him, make sure that it's a cause. So if it goes to court, it would last, and the judge will see that you were right by his firing. I think that's what the issue is. So we can go back and forth, or they're trying to figure it out. Let's get this done and get out of here, but I know we have to get this done, but it's just, if we find without cause, you pay them 20 weeks. If you find with a cause, make sure it's a cause. Don't just say something and fire him and you can't prove it. And I think that's what the contract is about.
All right, anyone else about Section 1B? What's your pleasure for this? To come back?
Yeah, we could, Madam Chair, we can come back, but I agree with the 3-year contract terms.
Okay.
And I'm at 2 years, Madam Chair. And here's the other thing I want to add to Section B. Mr. Lawson's absolutely right. Because if you do terminate with cause, it's very subjective, Mayor. So, it's not a simple open and shut. If we determine that, it may be something that's with cause, but that's very subjective. And, I think just in normal practice, just what we did with our last city manager, I think it's prudent to do 2 years. And to add on to that, I don't even like beyond that comma with the 3-year option to remove. So even if it was 2 years, I don't want to have an option to renew. It's already implied that once you're here, you have the option to renew. And the reason I have reservations about that should be tied to some sort of performance evaluations, as opposed to just providing an option, and his performance evaluation doesn't exactly measure up by a majority of the board.
Okay.
Madam Chair, and I believe, Attorney, that's what it's based on, right? His performance.
No, it's not in the contract.
It's not in the contract now, right?
There is a provision for a performance evaluation where he and the council will establish benchmarks. That's related, though, to an increase in salary, if you will, not tied to the actual term or the renewal.
Okay. So if I can clarify, and that's the perfect question that you asked, Mr. Mayor, because if, for instance, we do a performance evaluation of the city manager and he's not meeting our performance, and then someone says, well, I move to terminate the city manager based on he's not met our performance goals. That essentially is that same situation Mr. Lawson is talking about, because it's very subjective. So I think we need to err on the side of caution in 2 years, but I'm not giving anybody a contract, the sun, moon, or the stars. I've only got on city council because I had to walk and knock on every street. So you know what that means? Prove yourself. And I think it's better for us to do 2 years. And if everybody has the faith in this audience like they do about Mr. Evans, I don't think it'll be a problem for Mr. Evans to do 2 years. But I just don't want to continue to see us get into this path of now we're obligated because somebody makes an irrational decision. And I think you heard it perfectly today, Mayor. What city council shouldn't do is come in a city council meeting. When we were at the League of Cities today, they said, don't come into a city council meeting and decide you want to fire the city manager. That can very much happen after a performance evaluation. So if we have 2 years, I think that does provide a safety net for the city that we're not already obligated to paying an additional. And this is, so let me pause. And I just have to say this. I know everybody's looking at the $220,000 that's on the paragraph 2A. Well, I have members to know. Let me tell you what that real true amount is that the city spends on this. So, and maybe this would probably lend to members going to the 2-year contract. That's actually about, I calculated that at about $380,000 that the city will spend on a city manager through benefits, pension, sick pay, vacation, car allowance, cell phone. We're paying him $380,000 a year. So if you're going to sit here and suggest that, yeah, we can just arbitrarily do 3 years, we're going to find ourselves on the hook if something like this, a performance evaluation, comes up at $1 million for the city manager. So while the salary is $220,000, there are many other provisions in this agreement that cost the city dearly. So I'm not agreeing with 3 years, members. So please be mindful that $220 is just the salary. That's not the benefits and the other fringe items that the city manager enjoys.
Okay, anyone else? So for me, I am taking in everything that everyone is saying as far as my one cent says. I do understand you all are making some very valid points regarding that, but I know we have department heads that are making 120, 130, 150,000. And so for their amount, their total amount is not just 120, 150,000. Everyone that receives the insurance benefits and all of the other retirement and all that, their numbers are actually bigger than what you see as their salary. So I think that kind of applies to everyone. But in terms of the years, for me, I would be fine with the 3 years, with the feeling almost the same way. We always have an option to terminate without cause. And as the mayor stated, that is what got us into all of the trouble and caused all of the drama that we went through for so long, because you didn't have to make up a cause. You didn't have to fire with cause. If they had just fired without cause, nothing would have been said. So you're not stuck with him if you fire him without cause. So I'm fine with the 3 years. So I'm just making note of it, as well as I'm sure Ms. Nguyen is making note of it as well. For Section 1B, we're going to bring that one back, and Ms. Nguyen will speak to everyone in between this meeting and the next meeting after she's spoken with the attorneys and Mr. Evans. So we'll bring that back. All right, Section 2, salary and evaluation, Section 2A, which says, beginning at the date of execution of this agreement, the annual base rate salary will be $220,000. Any comments?
I'm fine with that.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just to be clear, the city manager, Mr. Evans, what was his salary when he was hired?
179.
179. And 2 years later, we're going to be bringing him in at 220. My concern or my question is, even if he was here and he would have stayed on, he would have received probably cost of living. He would have received increases from the city, which would be between 3 and 5%, which would have took his salary to about 189 first year, 196, 97 the second year, if he received those benefits. Why are we bringing him in 2 years later at 220?
Because he's worth it.
Well, like I said before, the 220 is just none of this is in stone, so you just tell us what you would like to see.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I mean, this is not.
Well, I think we're just having a discussion. I don't have a set direction as to what I would like to.
Okay. Please keep your comments down, please, in the audience.
And Madam Chair, our goal is just to negotiate the best deal for the city of
Yes.
Riviera Beach. It is not for one individual
Right.
or one individual. It's to talk about what's the best bet for our city.
Right.
So with the salary that Mr. Evans has portrayed to us, I don't want to compare other municipalities. I don't want to have those discussions. I want to look at where we are now and what we want to bring in. And at 220, I think that's too high compared to where he was before and what he would be if we had the increases over this 2 year period with maximum increases.
Okay.
So, and in addition to that, there was discussions of him leaving and also receiving a settlement. His termination was considered by the judge to be, wrongfully terminated, and he received a settlement, which equated to about $114,000 of money that went to him, plus the attorney fees. So he was fairly compensated for the time, and we do want him back. But to give him an increase based on the time frame that he would have been here, I don't think 220 is feasible or fair for the city.
Okay, do you have an amount that you would like to share tonight, or you want to wait until the second meeting? By providing something tonight, that gives us something to go to the table with.
I really want to see some of the other terms,
Okay.
because he wants to come to the table
Okay.
with a 1 year guarantee. He wants a 3 year contract. Is 2 years going to be feasible for him? So the amount, I would be more comfortable with bringing him in back at what he believed in at the 180 when he left here, because we haven't even had the discussions about the settlement that he received.
Okay.
And a lot of us want to have that discussion about the settlement. I believe he was fairly compensated for the time that he left, but at the same time, to receive almost 30% more is not feasible.
Okay. Ms. Lanier?
I would just like to say that the 220 that is starting, I agree with that salary. And I also like to say this. This city is in need of department head directors. It is in need of a overhaul to this city. When I say overhaul, I mean that we have fire department stations that are closing. We have I don't even have to list out the number of things that are wrong with this city. And I don't like to say wrong in terms of, it's just that we need to be able to be in a position to address these concerns. Mr. Evans comes to the table with being one out of 1,300 people who are credentialed as a city manager. We need to be able to bring someone to this city because we are in a situation here, people. And we need to bring the best person to this table. And I think that when we look at salaries and we look at compensation, yes, we have to talk about it. Yes, we have to look at it. Yes, we have to do things that are most frugal and that's best for our city. But we also have to look at the fact that what this gentleman is walking into here. We are looking at a situation where the city of Riviera Beach needs to move forward, and we need to move forward fast. So we need to be able to put this together. If we need to come back to the table, if we need to have conversation with the law department, I just want this next meeting to be voting on this contract, because we need to be able to put this to bed, because there are other things. Mr. Evans won't be here for 65 days. We're going to have meetings, we're going to have decisions to make without him here anyway. So we need to be about the business of trying to put this to bed and move forward and take care of the business of this city that we need to do in these next 65 days.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
So I have you as the 220, but because we will be bringing it back, though. Is that correct, Ms. Lanier?
No, I'm good with the 220.
Okay, yeah.
And let me say this. It was stated from this board a couple of weeks ago that we cannot continue to lowball people that wants to come into this city, that we should pay them top dollar to get the best people. All right, so if that's the case, why are we struggling with the 220? Now, but I believe everybody should have their point. But if we're saying we want the best, because the condition that the city is in, who's going to come in with anything less than that? Now, somebody may take the job at 180, but are they the best? And so if we're saying we need the best to move us forward, let's be serious about who he is, or, you know, if you got somebody else that want to come in that you think that's better, but you're going to start them less than 220, I don't know if nobody will come in here willing to do this job less than 220 right now. So we have to look at that also, right? This is coming into a tough job. Many of us, we've been here for a couple of weeks. We see the need that our city is in. So, you know, we need to look at that too. But if we're going to say we need the best, and we say that we should pay, we shouldn't lowball, let that be across the board also.
All right, Mr. McCoy, you just want to bring back, you don't want to give any amount tonight, right?
No, but it's definitely not over $200,000. And in response to the mayor, yes, I think we do deserve the best, and I'm not trying to lowball them. But if in your time until the next meeting, if you could show me a city manager that started out at a municipality and got 220 of comparable size, meaning population, budget, coastal city, you know, I'm definitely open to considering it. But the research that I've seen, it's just hard to really bring me to, because remember, it's not the 220. Mm-hmm. You got to understand that there are other items that's tied to the 220 that puts this way out of, I think, what anybody imagined.
Right, Madam Chair.
Well, hold on 1 minute. Are you done, Mr. McCoy?
But it's like Chair said. I mean, everybody that has you may make 150 here, but actually going to make 150 when all the benefits come in. So we have to look at that also. But I can tell you this: how many city managers have had to come in a situation like our city manager is going to come in? So you have to look at it also. I mean, let's look at it in totality. Like, you know, the person that has to come in here has a lot of work to be done. And I'm not negating. I want all of us to think individually. There's nothing wrong with that, to disagree to agree. But I think we need to also look at that. Whoever we bring in, what are they facing coming in here? And so that's going to be tied to the salary. Although the average person that we're going to look at may not have started at 220, but when they started, did they have the issues that our city have right now? So I think we need to look at that too.
Madam Chair.
Did you want to speak, Mr. McCoy? Or?
Well, I would.
Well, let me just say this before we continue going back and forth. I think we've already come to the conclusion we'll be coming back on this.
Yeah.
So we will have another long discussion on it. We do have 20-something items to get through.
Do we extend right now? Because it's 10 till.
Well, I mean, we can if someone wants to
Public
make.
comment yet, do we?
Madam Chair, there is no time limit on special city council meetings and workshops.
Okay, thank you. No, I haven't done public comment because we just did comments, and so if we can get through a couple more of these, then we'll go into public comment. But I think everybody that's in here have spoken at one point or another. So if Mr. Lawson and Mr. McCoy, what you were going to speak about, is that something that we can hold off for the next meeting since we're coming back anyway with this, or is it something you need to say tonight?
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
I do believe we may be far off in regards to this salary, so we can bring it back, but just in response to the mayor's,
We got to keep down the conversations because it's coming up here. Go ahead.
just in response to the mayor's comments about the hiring the best, we did say that, but we also discussed not bringing in a chief information officer at over $6,000 a salary. So I know that we are trying to hire the best, but we did vote that down. We're being mindful of the budget of the affairs of the city, and we have to account for every penny that comes in the city. So with this being a city manager that's coming to the table, as he's coming back from the previous salary that was $180,000, to increase him by 30%, it seems like a stretch. So every city has their challenges. Every city has their issues and concerns. So we keep looking at this city as if it's such a hornet's nest. I'm very confident in the new council that's here and the decisions that we will make. The city voted us in and decided to go with these directions. So I'm not really worried with one individual coming to save the city.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
And I'm not either, but remember, the council doesn't run the city. We need a good city manager to run our city.
And
Amen.
Hold on. Did you go ahead? You have the floor. You wanted to comment?
Go ahead, we can
Okay.
continue.
So let me just say this. We have identified Section 2A. We will bring this back when we have our next meeting, but in the interim, the conversations will be going back and forth with the other side, and Ms. Nguyen will keep you all updated as to what is occurring with that situation in regards to this amount. I will say that we have to, I think, when I'm thinking in terms of a salary, I look at all of those things that you all spoke of, but I also look at how many employees we have that the city manager is overseeing, thinking about the department heads that are making close to $200,000 as well, thinking about all of the work that needs to be done. When we put the job out numerous times over the past year and a half, I can assure you there were not very many quality people applying for the position. We will definitely be able to get someone to come. We never had a problem with getting people to apply for the position, but, it was what you were going to bring in was what you had to be concerned with, and it's not a matter of bringing someone in. We can get people in, but we need to make sure that whoever comes in are going to be willing to put in the work to get things done, because we do have a lot of work that needs to be done. We have a lot of positions that need to be filled, and we need quality people being hired to go into those positions so that we can move forward and do the things that we've been talking about. So I'll be keeping that in mind. I'm right now, I'm with the 220, but this is one thing I can share with everybody, is that in the discussions with Mr. Evans, he does want to come to an agreement that everyone can live with. He doesn't want to come in with a 3-2 vote or anything like that. So I'm pretty confident that he's open to negotiations. So I don't think he's stuck on an amount. But keeping in mind that he does have a ballpark area, but the negotiations are very much open, and he would like to make sure he has the support of everyone. So that is something to keep in mind as we're discussing in the future about the rest of the items.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
And just to be mindful, I'm very adamant, after speaking with Mr. Evans, I had my own personal interview with him. We sat for 3 hours and had discussions in depth, and I'm confident that he will be amazing for the city. But we also have about 9 other interim positions that need to be filled. with permanent directors. So being very cautious of this budget, of what we're bringing in Mr. Evans for, and realizing we have other individuals that are going to need to be paid as well, because his job is to run the city, but he's going to need enough of a budget. Can we even afford all Mr. Evans plus all the other permanent heads we have to fill? So those are things we have to look at, and we have to have those tough discussions. And negotiating contracts is what we have to do. Mr. Evans can't come in here with a one-sided contract, because I know that he is still he's hurt from what happened. And I understand it, but we also have to be careful, because he will come back because we want him back, and we will make this work. But our goal is to negotiate a price that makes sense for the city.
Right. Now, I know Mr. Sherman is here, but if he could come up just so you have this information when the days are going by, I think the information that Mr. Sherman was going to speak about was how that would impact our budget.
Right.
Okay.
That's why he's here.
Mr. Sherman, can you just come up and just give us the information, just so that we have this in the back of our head as we're thinking over the next few days, and then I just want you to share it, and then we'll move on to the next item. And then have that, he'll be back for the second meeting as well if there are any questions that pop up.
Yes. Good evening, Randy Sherman,
Good
Director of
evening.
Finance. Keep in mind, we're carrying, when we budgeted this year, we were budgeting close to $200,000 for this position. So 220 is not out of the realm of reaching. Obviously, we've gone through this year. There have been a number of vacancies, not only in administration, but also in the other departments. Right now we're carrying about 80 vacancies, and I think it's critical. It's critical to get the right people, to get them in at the right price, to get qualified people in. But we have flexibility within the staffing to make the numbers work. No matter where you end up. Again, we haven't had an assistant city manager all year, and so there's a lot of flexibility in there. I wouldn't necessarily, I don't want to say not be concerned with the budget, because obviously we have to be, but the difference truly between 180,000 and 220,000, or 190,000 and 220,000, is not that impactful to the overall budget. Again, it's a matter of getting the person to control these 80 positions, get in your department heads, and then set the course going forward.
Okay.
Okay.
Did anyone have something that they wanted to say tonight, or you wanted to bring something up at the second meeting regarding what he just spoke about?
No? Okay.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I do want to remind us that Mr. Evans has a job right now in a city that is desperate to keep him. So I want to be cognizant of the fact that they are probably offering him more money and more perks to stay in Madeira Beach. So let's just be careful we don't shoot ourselves in the foot over a couple of $1,000s difference. So.
Yeah, but follow up, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I respect that. That's not even germane to this conversation, because here's why. Once we set this standard of bringing in a city manager at $220,000, in 10 years when Mr. Evans finds a job being, a CEO of some corporation, you know what the salary requirement minimum has to be for a city manager here? Whatever the salary is that Mr. Evans is leaving on. So we set this bar very high, and I just pulled up this article. Virginia Baker, when she got hired for Palm Beach County, her salary was $257,000 for the whole entire county, and that's thousands of employees. So that's my piece. That's all I got on that one.
All right. So we'll bring Section 2A back. Section 2B, the city agrees to increase said base salary and/or benefits of the city manager in such amounts to an extent that the council may determine desirable on the basis of an annual performance evaluation of the city manager. Such evaluation shall be in such form as the city council deems appropriate, using benchmarks established by the city council and city manager within 30 days of the effective date of this new agreement.
And that language will be changed to within 30 days of July 1st, which is approximately his start date based on the 65 days in Section 1B.
So the reason for that change was because of typically when the contract is executed, the person usually starts. But in this case, he wouldn't be starting for 65 days. And so with us, so if we kept it as is, that means that we would be setting this without having any dialogue or having any opportunity to work with him. We would be setting this 30 days, 35 days before he even starts working. So what the contracts typically say is 30 days after the person has started working. So that's why the wording would be changed from it saying effective date of this new agreement to 30 days after the date that he begins, or whatever that date would be. Okay? Any comments on that section?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm okay with 2B.
Anyone else? Any comments on this section? Everybody good with this?
Yes.
McCoy, Lanier?
Yes.
All right, section 2C. 2C, nothing in this section shall require the city to increase the base salary or other benefits of the city manager. However, the city manager shall be entitled to receive across-the-board cost of living increases that may be granted to general employees from time to time. Furthermore, the city's failure to conduct the scheduled evaluation shall not constitute noncompliance with the material provision on the part of the city manager. Any comments on this section?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
will this be in addition to the benchmark that we set in Section B?
Yes. Section B does not require, it requires an annual performance. It does not require that you provide an increase, but if you do, whether you provide an increase or not, he will be entitled to the cost of living increase as all other general employees. So if it's a 2, 3, 5% cost of living, he will get that as well. And that's standard as well. And that, I believe, that was also in his last contract.
So, Madam Chair, the cost of living increase, what have we had over the last 5 years on average for cost of living increases, if anyone has that?
Mr. Sherman, Mabry, I don't have that information.
The management group has gotten between 3 and 5%.
So the cost of living would be for management, for the city manager would be between 3 and 5%, plus whatever we negotiate in Section B, Madam City Attorney?
That's correct.
So we could be looking at anywhere between 8 and 10% annually increased, depending on whatever we negotiate with him.
It would be totally up to the council. I can't tell you what that number is.
Well, that would be between the council and the city manager, because within 30 days, we have to negotiate a fair agreement.
You would be negotiating the benchmarks, not necessarily
benchmarks, right.
what the increase would be until you do the annual performance evaluation.
Anyone else?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
that too is contingent on the actual salary amount, so I would like to see it come back.
Okay.
I wouldn't be able to support it at 220.
Okay, so 2C, we have some people with some concerns with that. McCoy, Lawson as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Ms. Lanier?
No.
Okay. Okay.
If I may, Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just want everyone to understand also that when you say bring it back the second time, if there are any changes made, of course, that has to go back to Mr. Evans and his attorney, and then, so there may be a third time, depending on what those negotiations are.
Right,
We may
if
not
the
agree to
items, because
something.
these are not the ones that we were necessarily working back and forth. These would be new items that are going back and forth, so that could potentially push it past the second meeting. The only items that were still open were the ones we mentioned earlier, so those could essentially be finalized and brought back and discussed during the second meeting. But if we're opening up something new, which this was not one of them, then we could possibly go into.
And if you make changes in your second meeting, they have to go back to him.
as
If we
well.
come back to if you leave the salary where it is now, let's say, for
Mhm.
example, and you come back at the second meeting and you change, and the council votes to change it, we have to take that back to him.
Right, right, okay. All right, and I'm okay with C, but we'll bring C back. All right. Did you all have something, you have nothing in mind because you want to go along with the other one? All right, Section 3A. This section is about the duties and obligations. The city manager shall have the duties, responsibilities, and powers of said office under the charter. That's pretty standard language, Ms. Nguyen?
Yes.
For 3A. Anyone have any issues or concerns with 3A?
I'm okay with it.
Anyone else? I mean, Ms. Lanier McCoy?
It's good.
Okay. 3B, city manager shall remain in the exclusive employ of the city and shall devote all time, attention to perform his duties. City manager, however, may engage in educational and professional activities and other employment activities upon receipt of approval by the city council, provided that such activities shall not interfere with his primary obligation to the city as city manager. The city manager may not engage in business opportunities that conflict with the interests of the city and/or fiduciary duty as city manager. The city manager shall dedicate no less than an average of 40 hours per week in the performance of his duties hereunder. And that is standard language, that's language that's been in several other contracts.
That's correct. He did request the addition of being able to participate as an adjunct professor, if you will, in an Institute of Higher Learning after the first year, if he thought that he could handle those responsibilities in addition to his responsibilities with the city.
Is that one that would come back, or is that one he wants that to be in here, or based on the approval of the council?
Right. It says engage in educational and professional activities.
So
I think
that would
that's
cover
sufficient.
that.
However, he may want for it to be specific, and so that may come back.
Okay. Anyone have any concerns with the request for the possibly doing adjunct work in the colleges, provided it doesn't interfere with any of his duties?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I do have a concern about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't see the first year in there. Is that something I'm missing?
No, that's
It's not in there.
Okay, well, I would ask and counter by saying not after the first positive performance evaluation.
okay.
So, or, because we don't do a performance evaluation according to this until a year, right?
That's correct.
Right, and then this provision still has to come back for city council approval if he chooses to seek outside employment.
Correct.
Okay, so that's where I'm at.
Okay, so not until after the first year performance evaluation, you're saying?
Correct.
I believe, Ms. Nguyen, I know at one point he mentioned about the third year, not doing it until the third year. Was it?
My understanding was that it was after the first year.
Okay, so we'll get clarification
Yes,
on
we
that
can see
part.
clarification.
Okay, but either way, based on the evaluation, a satisfactory evaluation is what you're saying? Okay.
But at minimum, so at a minimum 1 year. I don't know if we're going to do an evaluation prior to then, but
You're talking about the evaluation?
performance evaluation, we wouldn't be doing one prior to a year. Okay.
Right, it's
But-
annual performance.
But what I was saying is that after the second year, into the third year is what he had mentioned at one time, and then what Ms. Nguyen is speaking of is doing it in the second year, and you would add on the performance evaluation piece. All right?
Right, so,
Okay.
and again, our approval shouldn't be whether or not it's a positive performance evaluation. It should be depending on whether we agree with whatever this outside employment is, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, but do you
My
want that?
understanding, just so I can have some clarification, is that he wouldn't come to you until, and I'll clarify with him, the first or second year, if he decides he wants to do that, but then it would still be after the performance evaluation and upon approval of the city council.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
okay. Everyone okay with that? All right, so that'll come back. 3C, in the event a city manager shall serve on any appointed boards or elected boards or professional organizations. I think that's like a standard one. Is that Ms. Nguyen?
Yes, that's standard.
3C, anyone have any issues with that one? Everyone good with this, 3C?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. McCoy?
Yes.
All right, Section 4, automobile allowance and communications equipment. Section A, well, first of all, the city manager is required to be on call for 24-hour service. Section 4A, the city shall grant to the city manager an automobile allowance of $500. He requested the $500. I know someone else mentioned about the council. And how much, do you recall, Ms. Nguyen, what the others were?
500 is standard.
Okay. All right, anyone have any concerns with Section 4A? Everyone good with 4A?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, Section 4B, city manager, the city shall provide the city manager with a cellular telephone stipend of $75 per month. However, the city manager agrees that the cellular phone shall be the property of the city and returned to the city at the end of employment in accordance with city policy. So in this section here, he was requesting to purchase a separate phone of his own. In his mind, he wanted to minimize the amount of money that is being spent on cell phones, equipment, that type of thing, just providing him with the stipend. He would in turn go and buy his own phone. If there are any public records that are requested, he would provide them, and then at the end of his employment, he has to turn the phone over to the city. Now, what we typically do is the city issues the phones, and so that's typically what happens. So that is an item that we can make a decision that he can purchase his own and he gets a $75 stipend, and he also provides the public records when requested, and he has to submit the phone back to the city, well, give the phone to the city when he is no longer employed here. The flip side of that is the city purchases the phones, pay the bills, which I don't know what the rates are, but that would be the other option. So, anyone want to chime in on 4B? Everybody good with it, or?
I'm good with it. I'm not quite sure I understand why he would do that, but is it saving the city that much to pay him $75 as opposed to buying a phone? I guess it could potentially be.
That's what he said,
Okay, then I'm
yes.
fine with it.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
He wants a reimbursement, so I guess just to be clear, the cell phone, he's going to have to turn it in. He's going to buy a cell phone, or is he using his personal cell phone?
No, he's going to buy a separate phone.
So he's going to have a separate phone.
Mhm.
He wants to purchase it.
Yes.
And then he just wants to be reimbursed are we paying for the phone? And he's going to pay his cost for that
He's
phone?
paying for that himself.
And then we're going to pay him $75 a month in his contract to pay the bill.
Yes.
And is there a reason why we're doing this process? Because doesn't seem standard, because we all seem to have city cell phones issued.
Right, and that's what I said, though there are two options. This is what he came to the table with, and then the other option is for us to have city issued like we typically do. So if that is something that you all want to change and we take it back, then that's what we can do.
So the cell phone's not going to be underneath the city plan. So he'll have his own plan. He'll have his own carrier.
Yes.
And public record requests will be
Yes,
the
this-
same with him. He'll submit it for public records
Yes.
requests. I remember there was some instance in regards to a password or a cell phone that he had. What was the situation with that prior? Is
I'm
anyone
not aware of
familiar
it.
with that?
I'm not aware.
So he'll have his own carrier. It won't be under the same carrier that the city uses, and he wants to pay his own bill
Mhm.
with his own phone, and he'll submit it for public records requests once we request it.
Mhm.
I've asked for language. We can add the public records language in there, which I think we should. And I've asked for language from the IT department just because it may be technical as it relates to wiping the phone clean or what have you, or how he would turn the phone back over to us,
Mhm.
because he is purchasing the phone himself. But upon his leaving the city, he's agreed to give us the phone.
Right.
Because we would need it for public records.
Right. So for this item here, as I said before, typically the standard language that's in here is that the city issues the phones, just as we all are issued phones. So if that is something that you want to change, just let me know what you all would like to do with that, and then we can go back to the table with that item.
I guess I'm just confused as to why he wouldn't want to be on the city cellular service, and is there any conflicts, city attorney, with him? I mean, what language, I want to put the language in here, the proper language, to make sure that we're covered, because we've had cell phone discussions in the past.
Right. I'll talk to IT. It may, I don't know. I'll talk to IT because I don't know.
Well, what I can say is that not every municipality issues phones, so I would imagine this is probably not foreign, good God, foreign, but it's just not what we typically do. So it's different in that it's different from what the city typically does, but I don't think it's so different from other places, because some people don't even get issued phones at all, or iPads. So, and like I said, with his explanation was to not have to burden the city of it with the extra bill, paying for the iPhone, whatever kind of phone it is. But if we, would like to change it to make it be the standard language that the city typically use, then we just need to say that.
I would recommend that, because to change it to not burden the city on a cell phone bill, when we're looking at a salary of $220, I don't think it's that big of a burden. And I think we should stay consistent with what our city does versus what he would want to recommend, paying his own bill on a separate provider.
Okay, Ms. Lanier?
I'm good with how it is. I don't know what the insinuation is that something nefarious may be happening because the person wants to have their own cell phone. I don't know about that, and I'm not saying that's what you're saying. I'm just saying I don't see a problem with that, and the language, the way it stands, is fine with me.
Okay, Mr. McCoy?
I know what at least I believe what his reasoning is. He doesn't want to be tracked, and members, you do know they are tracking our personal cell phones, so that's probably one of the reasons he doesn't want one. But the public records are still there. But, I actually I'll ask city manager, could I not have a city-issue cell phone? And I wasn't given the option to opt out. So that's a very good reason as to why I believe there is. And then here's the other problem. There comes a compatibility issue. So whatever phone he's purchasing, it obviously has to be coordinated with IT, because they told me absolutely not. I couldn't put city emails and have my phone as a client device. So that's what I would think his reason is. So,
Madam Chair?
Yes.
And to be clear, there was no insinuation. It was a direct statement that this is not what the city does. So our city has a set policy where I cannot use my personal cell phone. So one individual should be on the same policy with the rest of the city. So to be very clear, I mean, that would be something that I would recommend with the city of Riviera Beach negotiating a contract with a cell phone, since we've had cell phone discussions within this city within the past year.
Okay. So, Mr. McCoy, where are you with this section?
It doesn't bother me.
Okay. Botel?
I'm fine.
Okay. And I'm fine with it, knowing that we put that portion in there about the public records. I understand the concerns with the phones. I mean, I see both sides, but I do believe at least what his explanation was trying to minimize the amount. I can only tell you what he said. All right, so section 4.
He's trying to minimize the amount of what? Expense on the city?
Yeah.
Oh, well, clearly he can come off of the contract if he wants to minimize the amount of expenses.
Well,
You know what? I'm with Mr. Lawson, because that's not even a good reason to say.
Okay.
If he's way at $220,000 and he would say, I mean, we calculating a phone bill at $100 a month, and that's in the end of the year, that's $1,200. So how is he really saving us any money?
Okay.
When he's way ahead of, no, he needs a city phone, just like I do.
All righty. All right, so section 4B, I'm fine with it either way. So that part will come back. All right, section 5, dues and subscriptions.
Standard, I'm fine.
Standard.
All right. Standard, anyone have any issues with that section there?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No.
Mr. Lawson, you're okay with that?
There's no cap in what the dues or subscription is at 5. I believe 5 and 6. I had notes about a cap for dues and professional services. I believe this language was taken out of, in addition to Attorney Wynn's contract as well, and I believe her contract has caps.
Ms. Nguyen?
Yes. There's a set amount in my contract.
Okay. For the other contracts, were there set amounts in those, or is it just by the budget, what the budget is
I
already?
don't recall.
All right.
As are approved in the city's annual budget.
So we want her to get that information, and then she can let everybody know about that, and that can come back
What information would she be getting?
about whether or not it's been standard in the other contracts, unless you all have the answer. I don't have them all up in front of me.
Well,
Any past ones, or is it just by the budget?
her dues and subscription says no less than $1,000 annually. And I don't know what I don't know what that association is, but is it, and I guess members, is it possible that city administrators are in more, I guess, professional associations than attorneys? Because $1,000 seems like a reasonable amount.
Well,
Because bar fees is like 250, no more than $300.
No more than 300,
Right.
not including sections. But
Now-
there are other professional organizations.
Madam Chair.
Well, I'm not sure. Does this, Mr. Sherman or Ms. Nguyen, does this include, no, that wouldn't include the Florida League of Cities or National League of Cities. That's not a part of that, is that?
Madam Chair.
It says,
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Nguyen.
It just says, and other dues and subscriptions on behalf of the city manager as are approved in the city's annual budget on a line item basis or as separately authorized by the city council. So he names those two organizations, but however, there could be others.
Okay, so do you all want to bring this back and just get a little more clarification?
Not to exceed
provide
$1,500. I think that's reasonable.
15?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Except it says here, as approved by the city's annual budget. So don't we have control over the budget, and don't we have the ability to say, when the budget comes around, this is what we're going to put in that line item? So I'm not sure it has to be in the contract as an amount.
And I think that's why it's typically,
It's
I have
a
never
standard
seen it.
boilerplate language.
Yeah, I've never seen it, an amount in here. And this language has come from, I think, a few contracts, and within the budget is where we set how much we want to do it. So we have the leeway to change it in the budget if we don't, if you want it to be more or less.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
The reason I brought up the cap is because I was kind of leading into 6 as well. The budget has to be approved by the city manager, the city council, but that's in regards to the other dues, the ones that he requested. I have no idea what those prices are. I have no idea what that cost is. And then if we get into 6, which we'll get to, there's no cap there either.
Okay, so you want her to check on the amounts, and at least that way she can check on the, go ahead, Mr. Sherman.
ICMA is 1,400, FCMMA is about 300.
Madam Chair.
Are you done, Mr. Lawson, or Mr. Mo-
So 1,400 is ICMA.
And-
Are those are annual dues?
Yes.
1,400, and then
FCMMA is 300.
And then if it would be possible, Madam Chair, to just take a look at Section 6 as well. Travel, he's looking for that in regards to these actual association and these events as well. So we're talking about an additional $1,700 now, and I
Well-
believe our city, go ahead, ma'am.
Each department typically has a travel budget within their department, so that would be in there. Mr. Sherman, am I correct on that? Every department, even Public Works, Finance, they all have a travel line within the budget. And again, the amounts that are set in the budget is set by us. So if we want to decrease it from there, it doesn't typically go within the wording of the contract. We make that determination during budget time.
And the only reason I brought up the caps is because I believe our city attorney, which we've taken some of the language from hers to assist with this contract, does have a cap.
I don't know, why, is there a reason why you had a cap in yours versus the rest of the contracts? Typically, it's not identified in the contract because we determine that in the budget time. We control all the travel, all the promotion, all the dues. That's, each one of those things are line items that we vote on and say whether we want that in there or not.
But within his contract, we're negotiating an additional $1,700 now for at least the two dues, which is ICMA and FCMMA. So
So-
that's not going in the budget. That's going in his contract. So we're going to be paying that additional $1,700 based on what this contract's saying. Madam City Attorney?
So you're adding the 1,700 to the salary, I mean, you're, in your mind, you're figuring
Well,
that amount into the
no,
salary?
based on, not in my mind, on this contract. That's what it says here, that we're paying an additional $1,700 for these dues for these organizations, if I'm correct, Madam Attorney?
Yes, that would be correct, assuming that the amounts haven't changed that Mr. Sherman gave you.
Right. And that is, again, the travel and the dues and subscriptions are in our budgets. We each have a section for that, and
That's right.
believe me, ours is way beyond this. And then also, each department has a travel and a dues and subscription as well.
Well,
And we control the amount.
Madam Chair, but then when you think about, I understand you're speaking of dues, Mr. Lawson, but subscriptions. If he wants to get a news magazine subscription, that's not a council decision. I mean, whatever it is, I think it should be suitable, because now we're getting in the weeds a little bit, because, I mean, a subscription, you get the Time magazine. Is that a resolution item we need to vote on?
Oh, no, I'm just talking about, I'm sorry, Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm just talking about Section 5 in regards to the dues. Based on Attorney Wynn's contract, she had a cap on there, and I was just saying we should put a cap on there in the event that these dues are exceeding what amount we're comfortable paying. Because right now, we didn't even know what the due amounts were prior to actually agreeing to it.
Well, the amounts have been standard, and they've been in the budget for a while. So it's those amounts for those particular items are not, they haven't changed. We've paid for them for many people and many city managers over the years, because this is a standard language that's been in many contracts. I wasn't a part of the negotiating contract for Ms. Wynn as to why she asked for, why they had a specific amount in there, but typically there is no specific amount in here for these. But again, I don't feel it's necessary, I don't feel it's necessary to put an amount in either one of these sections, because we control that. So I'll put down that you have a concern for that, Mr. Lawson. You would like to see a cap. Anyone else? Who else has, where are you with this, Ms. Lanier?
I'm fine with this.
Mr. McCoy?
I don't want to see, it's fine. I don't want to see a cap.
Ms. Botel?
I don't want to see a cap.
Okay, and I would be fine with the language, simply because the language has been standard, and we do control the amount that is in there. So we will, if we have a consensus for the majority for that part to not add the cap, then we will just move forward with it as is for Section 5. All right. Section 6, professional development and travel. This is somewhat the same to the extent provided for and approved in the city's adopted budget. The city agrees to pay reasonable and customary travel and subsistence expenses. I don't know, I'm tongue-tied tonight. For the city manager's travel to and attendance at the ICMA annual conference to Florida City and all of the other conferences that are listed, including Florida League of Cities. This one is standard as well?
Yes.
Okay, and so I'm okay with this section
with it.
for the same reasons I just listed for Section 5. All right, Botel is okay.
Yes.
McCoy?
Yes.
Yes.
Lawson?
Yes.
All right. All right, Section 7, community involvement. The city recognizes the desirability of representation in and before local civic and other organizations. This is standard.
Correct.
I'm fine with it. Anyone have any issues with 7? So we'll continue and keep item 7. Section 8, personal time off. Upon execution of this agreement, the city manager shall be entitled to 25 vacation days for the first year of employment, which shall be paid to the city manager at his option. Vacation benefits after the city manager's first year of employment shall accrue at the rate established under standard city personnel policies. Any unused vacation days shall accrue to the city manager in accordance with city policy. Upon termination of this agreement by either party, the city manager shall be paid for each vacation day accrued at his then current salary. Payment for said vacation days shall be made to the city manager regardless of the manner of termination. This part here, what is different from what has been standard, Ms. Nguyen?
The first sentence regarding the 25 vacation days upfront paid to the city manager at his option. So what's standard is that all the employees accrue vacation time. This would be 25 days upfront, and I would have to make a change, not upon execution of the agreement, but upon the start date. Mr. Evans has asked for 25 vacation days upfront, and that he can be paid for those days at his option instead of any or all of those days, instead of taking those days.
Okay. Anyone have any comments regarding Section 8? Anyone have any concerns with Section 8?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So Mr. Evans wants to receive the 25 days up front for his vacation days and not occurring. Is this going to happen over his entire contract? This is just the first year of the contract?
The first year.
And then after that, he's going to accrue.
True.
It's not just
Man, listen. But over this period, Madam Chair, immediately starting, he's going to be paid out. Will that affect our budget in the event Mr. Evans does leave, if he's terminated? That those 25 days up front, isn't that going to affect our budget?
Mr. Sherman? You might as well bring your
Just sit
computer
right
over
up.
to the chair to the front.
Go ahead, move right up.
Come on to the table over here.
I got an extra chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't budget for anyone's sick or vacation payouts. So you have employees who are coming and going all the time. And what the departments do is they absorb it within their budget, either by leaving something vacant or, some delay in hiring. But is there additional money that would be paid out? Absolutely. But again, as far as the budget, we don't budget that on a consistent basis.
And what does it mean in reference to at his option? Are those days, will he be paid out at the end of the year for those vacation days, or is that going to be, what does that at the option term mean?
Well, we do allow the employees to do what we call a buyback once a year of up to 80 hours of sick and vacation. And again, I haven't spoken to him, on this issue, but it's, I don't know if that's what he has in mind, that he would be able to participate. I believe in the past, managers have participated in the buyback. Yes. So I think that's what, possibly he's referring to.
Okay, anyone else? All right, so for this section,
Just
Let
so
me know.
that we're clear,
yes.
this is not the buyback language, but it's just at his option. He could decide at any time that he wants to cash out any or all of his vacation time. I just want you all to be clear on that. If you want to change it to the buyback, let me know and I can take it back to him, but it's totally up to you.
The buyback section, was that is that standard in the other
I
contracts?
believe, as Mr. Sherman stated, it's just standard for cashing out vacation time at the end of employment is standard for everyone.
Mhm.
The buyback may be standard for the general employees, I believe, Mr. Sherman? Yes.
Okay, and so, but the only difference in this, the only language that's different from most of the contracts regarding this is that he wants the 25 days up front
Correct.
versus every
Accruing.
month you get 5 days or whatever the case
2
may be.
days,
2
right.
days up front. 2 days every month. He would like the 25 up front.
Right. Most employees, for instance, I get 25 vacation days, my days accrue, I get 1 day per pay period.
Okay. Yes. Mr. McCoy?
Madam Attorney, should the language be changed to reflect that the city manager is advanced 25 vacation days? Because what this reads is the day we hire him, he's entitled to 25 days. So if he finds another job, I don't want him to take 25 days with him on pay.
He would.
In our first date.
The way this reads, upon the start date, he would bank 25 vacation days that he would be able to cash out at his option whether he leaves or not.
So, see, and members, here's what, this is what I'm saying. So this is the part that you don't understand. That's an additional $20,000 right there in just 25 vacation days. And I'm not comfortable with that. So that's $20,000 that you don't see in the 220. So that right there in itself takes him to $241,000 just off the bat.
Okay.
So what my suggestion is, if he has some prior vacation that he has planned or prior commitments of being off or whatever, I would like to see that he's advanced those 25 days, but he doesn't earn 25 days just by mere of him being hired.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
So,
Is that,
wait a minute, is there a way to,
I don't understand what advancing it would do. I don't know, I mean, does that mean that he some kind of way pays it back? I don't understand the concept.
what are you?
Well, if you read just from the plain language of the first two sentences, it says he shall be entitled to 25 days.
Right? If you change it to advanced, I don't know that it changes the intent of that sentence.
Well, I think it does, because the very last sentence says, let's just say for argument's sake, he leaves after 7 months. The last sentence says, paid for said vacation shall be made to the city manager regardless of manner of termination. So if he's advanced 25 days, or he's given 25 days at the beginning, then essentially he's getting an additional $20,000 if he leaves in 4 months and hasn't taken one vacation day.
That last sentence is standard. The only thing that's different in this is that it's the advancement of a block of 25 days up front.
So it is an advancement.
It's an entitlement, it's an advancement, it's the same thing. It's
Entitlement.
25 days up front.
So entitlement and advancement is the same thing? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
In this sentence, I believe that it's the same intent, yes.
So, well, that's not what I'm thinking, because when I'm saying advance, if you advance me my paycheck, so when the following pay day comes, I can't go back to you and get another paycheck. I've already been given that. So what I'm saying is, if he is getting 25 days up front, perhaps he has an obligation. In 6 or 8 months, I don't want him to leave, and then he leaves with an additional $20,000 because we advanced him instead of, well, we entitled him instead of advanced him.
But is he's only guaranteed to have 25 a year, so if he's already received the 25.
But he wants some available up front, is what he's saying. Am I right?
Yes.
He wants them day one.
Mhm.
So we're advancing him essentially.
Right, but if he leaves, you're saying 6 months, you're saying he did not accrue enough
Right.
to,
We-
okay,
we're
so
only
with
gonna
that,
charge him what he accrued for
so
those first 6 months.
maybe we can put in there, if you want to put in there, if you leave, prorated, I mean, you either you pay back.
That's the same difference.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah, so that's something you want to see.
Right.
Basically, if you're gone 8 months.
Because, I mean, members, again, this is a wordsmith thing, and this is why you have attorneys. He's getting an extra $20,000.
I
That's all it
understand that.
is. So I want to make
So
sure
you're
that
comfortable with her doing some sort of wording?
he owes us that back in the event
It would be
that it's
prorated if
prorated.
he's gone before the year is up.
Correct.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I agree with that language of prorating.
Accruing?
No, I
Or
agree with
upfront, totally upfront
No, I don't agree
without?
with the upfront, no. I agree with the prorate of,
Advancing.
yes.
Okay.
So, and then we prorate in the event that he.
Mr. Lawson?
Madam Chair, that also says paid to the city manager at his option. Is the option, could he take 10 days in 2 months, just paid out in cash to him?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, can we adjust that language as well? Because I don't want him just to take it out as a cash payout in 2 months, 3 months, because he, just wants an extra payout and then be left with 5 days vacation or 10 days vacation. We should just do it as a standard practice of what we do for our other department heads in regards to their vacation time.
The
Because-
accrual,
Yes, because receiving it all up front and then having the option to take it as at will, that's definitely going to affect our budget.
okay, so essentially, you're wanting to go back to what the standard language is mostly for everyone, where it accrues. He gets the 1 or 2 days every month. He will not get the 25 up front, all of it up front, because he could have the potential to cash all of those out. Whereas if he did the accrual, he would be able to cash out only what he has earned.
Correct.
Madam
Yes.
Chair?
Mhm.
No, that's, what I'm agreeing to is the 25 upfront could be fine, but if he leaves in 4 months, then that has to be prorated, meaning that money.
Based on the accrual?
No.
No, based on the first year. You're speaking of first year.
Yeah,
Was it-
but, yeah, that's what I'm saying, based on the first year.
But how much are you going to want him to pay back if he leaves in
Pro
6
rata.
months?
The pro rata amount, meaning that if it's 6
Which
months.
would be,
What he would have earned.
right, yeah, based on, yeah, it
Exactly.
would have been 2 a month or 1 a month or whatever it is.
Exactly.
Madam
Yep.
Chair,
Yes.
I'm only good with that because I have every faith that he's not going to leave in 6 months, so I'm fine.
All right.
Oh, I gotta go, Madam Chair. If that's true, well, then go ahead and go with the 2-year contract, so that settles that. If you so assured, I mean, I'm trying to be fiscally responsible, and I think you're trying to,
It's, I get your point. I get both of your points.
so she agreed to 2 years, so we don't have to revisit
We've
that.
already moved past that, but we'll talk about that when that comes up again.
I will work on the language regarding 25 days upfront in the first year. However, if he leaves prior to the first year, the days will be prorated, and he'll only be entitled to what he would have earned had he accrued them.
Right. Everybody's good with that? All right. What I was looking to see how many more sections that I know that are not, that may have questions because they're not standard. We have about maybe 3, 4. Maybe about 4. So I know it's getting late. I do want to go into public comment, and then we come back to that, to those others. Okay? Hold on. Public comment shall be restricted to issues, matters, or topics pertinent to the City of Riviera Beach. Please be reminded that the City Council has adopted rules of decorum governing public conduct during official meetings, which has been posted at the entrance of the council chambers. In an effort to preserve order, if any of the rules are not adhered to, the council chair may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting, and/or building, if necessary. Please govern yourselves accordingly.
Madam Chair, the acceptance of public comment cards for this section of the agenda is now closed. Cindy March.
Hi, once again, I just want to ask a hypothetical question.
State your name, please, for the record.
I said Cindy March, so I'm going to repeat it.
Good
Okay,
evening.
Thank you. Hi. I just want to ask a hypothetical question to the prospective person, and I know this has something to do with your finance. Since Mr. Sherman was able to answer all the questions that you addressed to him, I don't know who can ask him, because I would like an answer for rebutting this or an answer. How much does a building official make after she has passed her test on the international level? What's the starting pay?
Well,
Can someone answer that for me, please?
towards the end, we will see if we have an answer for it. If not, they'll get back with you.
Okay, how will they get back with me? Through text, through what, phone call, or what?
Did you, as long
'Cause
as you put
I
your
don't plan to stay
information
here too
down.
much longer because we don't spend too much time on the same stuff of a $220,000 salary, which he might be very well qualified, and people want him back. I'm not saying I don't want him back, but all I'm asking, if you're going to find that kind of money in your budget for one individual, find the money in your budget for your city employees that's over a department that's doing an outstanding job as a team together. She's not doing it by herself. She's doing it with her employees. And I'm just asking for that answer because I think we need to stop belittling each other and pull together, like I said before, you know, and all the name calling when somebody come up here. I'm not in here for a 3-minute fame. I'm not here for that. I'm here to see the city move forward, because I believe if you do the right thing, you can get positive things out of here. Then you won't have to be going through these same discussions over and over again.
Thank you.
Wesley Schuler, Mary Bram, Brittany Thomas. Mary Bram, Brittany Thomas, Ernestine Gordon. Ms. Bram, you first. Okay. Brittany Thomas, then Mary Bram.
Hi, I'm Brittany Thomas. I live here in Riviera Beach. It was a couple of us here today, but because school, a couple of people left. But the reason we came today is because our boys play for Riviera Beach Chargers, the 8th grade travel basketball team. And we came in front of the city council to ask for support. Our boys were at the Disney Nationals this past weekend. Over 100 teams were there. They came in number 1. They beat everybody there this weekend. We have about 15 boys on our team, most of them residing here in Riviera Beach, only 3 outside of Riviera. We just asked for the support because we've been doing so much, with these boys with little help from the city. Mr. Blankenship has been helping us a lot, but it's been the parents coming out of pocket and having to donate and do things on our own. So we're just asking for some support from you guys. If you're having any time, if you can come to Wells Recreation Center. The boys practice there every Monday and Wednesday from 6:30 to 8:30 every week. Again, we have 15 amazing young men, all make 3.0 grade point averages, all potentially going to Palm Beach Gardens High School this upcoming year. I can't say too much more about them other than they're phenomenal young men. We're just looking for a better opportunity to keep them off the streets of Riviera Beach and doing something positive. I hope you guys come by and see us, and just thank you guys in advance for your support. Thank you.
Mary Bram, Ernestine Gordon, John Miller.
Hello, Miss Mary Bram, Riviera Beach. On the duties and obligations, okay, can I have everybody's attention? Start the clock over. City manager, who else is off the desk?
We'll start Ms. Bram back to
Thank you.
3, and we are all giving you attention. I
Thank
think
you.
everybody's legs are going to sleep for, and that was the only short time they had to get away.
Thank you. Okay. Courtesy here.
We heard you though. I could hear you in the
Okay,
bathroom
thank you.
when I'm there.
Okay, Ms. Mary Bram, Riviera Beach, apparently under duties and obligations. That section B there where the city manager should remain exclusive with the city of Riviera Beach, we do emphasize educational and that activities should not interfere with his primary obligation. I have Ms. Wynn's contract here. I hope that you all have her contract here too. In her contract under duties too, Ms. Wynn agrees to perform the duties and functions of the city attorney as specified in the city charter code of ordinance of the city of Riviera Beach, and agrees to perform such other legally permissible and proper duties and functions as the city council shall from time to time. Nothing herein shall construe to preclude Ms. Wynn from pursuing outside business interests or occasional teaching, writing, pro bono activities, or consulting perform on time off, so long as they do not constitute a conflict under the applicable ethics code. So you all read these contracts here. So that section there, and there's other things too. You all get this section here. And also too, no offense, she makes $185,000 base annually salary. Here it is here. Mr. Evans, when he was here, he started with $179,000. You all get more in allowance, car allowance than Mr. Evans did. He agreed to $500, offsetting some of that $220,000 there. He is worth this. Read these contracts here. I encourage you all to read and compare it. If we're going to be fair here, let's be fair. Ms. Wynn, it's no offense to you. Come on board. Let's get on board here. This is a little bit perturbed here. You want to dissect, but yet and still you haven't read others. And I got others over there too that I pulled out in my file folder. It does stipulate these things here. So let's be fair and move these things here. And don't just nitpick and nitpick here. Compare. Okay, she is the attorney, and I respect that. But this city manager has 4 more duties and obligations than anybody would ever have. You have 80-some vacancies in this city here. It's a disgrace. That board left this chaos here. I do not constitute you as being responsible for that. But I do constitute you highly for proceeding forward and doing the same things and getting the things that this city needs. I'm going to share this with you. Somebody mentioned about the IT. I have a niece. She's an IT specialist troubleshooter. So when I stand up here and talk about what goes on in deleting files, remember what I said. She's an expert. She's a troubleshooter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move Mr. Evans forward and stop nitpicking. Look at some of these other applications. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ernestine Gordon, John Miller, Amon Israel. Dolores Williams, Bonnie Larson, Sammy Brown.
All right. Oh. I knew Ms. Larson would hang in there with us.
It's almost 11 p.m. My
Well, we didn't get started till 8:30, so.
I know. Golly day. All right,
Bonnie Larson.
Bonnie Larson.
Good evening.
Good evening. And Deirdre, I didn't congratulate you. That was a wonderful pick to have her as the interim city manager. I didn't congratulate you, but that was a good pick. Very good pick. A couple of comments that are made by the new council tonight. This is a job, the city manager job. It's not a job in Riviera Beach. It's not a job for the faint of heart. Let me tell you. You get someone else. Look at these other salaries here. These other people are $235. Belle Glade, $235. Boca Raton, $260. Delray, $245. Jupiter, $215. And Wellington, $232,000. So let's not begrudge him the $220. When he left here, he cleared up quite a few things in that 6 months he was here. When he left here, we became the city in turmoil. We have more problems. Tell me one city in the entire state of Florida that has as many problems with their city government as Riviera Beach. Mayor Felder, you're absolutely correct. This is a gargantuan job. Not just anybody can do this job. If you look up the Tampa Bay Times, Google that, Tampa Bay Times, Jonathan Evans. I read about 5 or 6 articles over there, and the one thing they said was they're so happy with the amount of work he has gotten done in the short time that he's been there. Where have we heard that? We've heard that right here. He was unbelievable. We cannot get any assistance from our human resources. That is in shambles. They know they can't even interview anybody. We got all these department heads missing. We got all kinds of employees missing, 80 missing. He won't get any help from anybody. He's got to do all this himself. We talked about these salaries, the $235, and you said that he would have benefits. Yes, but everybody in the city gets benefits. Even the city council gets benefits. So whatever you get as a standard base, you also get benefits. So yes, it's going to be more than $220, but that's what everybody gets. Even part-time city council people get benefits, so it's always more. Why is he getting $500 for gas allowance and people on the council are getting $750? He's going to be here 24/7. He's the one who's going to be driving around, looking at things, going to people's homes when they can't even come here. So it sounds like a big amount, but look at what the other cities are making and look at the problems that we have. This is a monumental job. We don't want to be the city in turmoil forever. We want someone who's going to come and lift us out of that And if there's one person who can do it, it's Mr. Evans. We've had 6 months, so we've had a trial period. We know what he does. The other people, I saw some of those other resumes, we had resumes for other city managers, yet nobody compares. Nobody compares. Look up that Tampa Bay Times sometime and give him the money. Don't quibble with this. No, these other cities, they don't have problems like we do. We're the city in turmoil. We're tired of being in turmoil. We want someone who can lift us out of this. Thank you.
Thank you. That ends public comments.
That's the end.
All right. We'll go back to, we're now at section 9. Holidays, that's standard. Anyone have issues with that section? Everybody good with this section?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. Ms. Lawson?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Section 10, sick leave. Upon execution of this agreement, the city manager shall be entitled to 12 sick days for the first year of employment, which shall be paid to the city manager at his option. After payment for the first year of employment, the city manager shall be entitled to 12 sick days per year. Sick leave shall then accrue at the rate established under standard city personnel policies. Payment for all unused sick days shall be made to the city manager regardless of the manner of termination.
It's the same language as in the vacation leave, personal time off, Section 8, 12 sick days up front, paid at his option. What is the council's pleasure?
I have the same comment as before.
Same
Sorry,
comment
Madam
for,
Chair. I have the same comment as for.
okay,
section.
Madam Chair, I have the same comment as before doing the,
personal time off.
yes.
All right, Mr. McCoy,
I don't have a problem with it.
you're okay with that section staying just like that?
The sick leave, yes.
Is that different from
Well, it
8?
it is.
Okay.
It is
What
different. It doesn't entitle him to it at the beginning.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it should be upon start date, the city manager shall be entitled to 12 sick days for the first year of employment, which shall be paid to the city manager at his option.
So if he wants
It's
it at
the
the
same
beginning.
sentence
Oh.
with,
Same thing.
the only difference is the number is 12 instead of 25, and it's sick instead of vacation.
Do you want to have the same language as in section 8?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Same language
Mr.
as
Lawson,
that.
okay. So we bring back 10
8 and 10 with the same language.
with the same language. Okay, section 11, health, dental, life, and disability insurance.
Standard.
This is the standard language.
The only difference, well, when he and I talked yesterday, he wants it to say individual/family plan, which is fine. But that last portion after the comma, subject to any standard city applicable copay obligation, he wants that stricken. He does not want to pay any copay. And I think that would be, I have not talked to him about it, but this is, he struck it the first time, I left it in there. He brought it to my attention again. And so I believe that that would be any copays as it relates to doctor, hospital prescriptions.
That was at the beginning, I mean, that was a part of the list?
That, he sent some comments as it relates to that.
Oh, it said the city will pay for 100% of health insurance for the city manager and his dependents in short-term and long-term disability. So when you spoke to him, he broke down the 100% as being not just the premium, but including the copay?
That's correct.
Okay, that, I mean, we didn't have that conversation, so
Right.
the board, what's your pleasure on this section here?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I don't agree with that, because if we're already paying for your family, that's one thing, and co-pays are pretty hefty. Now, his family may be 6 individuals, and we're
Okay.
paying enough. I think that's fair enough, because, we're about to commit to something when we don't even know what plan he's going to opt to, so you're going to have some of those health plans that are very high deductible, and there may be some expensive co-pays, so I think we're good. I don't
Okay.
support that.
Okay, so you want the standard language, Ms. Nguyen, the standard language would be what it is, but it definitely would not include copay, right?
Correct. It would read just as you see it now. During the city manager's employment with the city agrees to pay the full premium costs of health, dental, and disability insurance under the terms of the city's group policies for an individual/family plan, comma, subject to any standard city applicable copay obligation.
What part would come out of his to be standard?
It would read just as I read it. He wants that last part to come out.
Oh, he wants it to come out. Okay, okay.
Correct.
Wow. All right.
Okay, so it will remain as it is if it remains as is, that means we do not pay for the copay portion.
Correct. He would pay the copay.
And
Mr. McCoy?
I was just curious about disability insurance. I have no idea what that is, simply because I've never seen or even heard of anyone that had a disability insurance plan for that amount of money. Because disability insurance typically works on the amount of pay that you're currently earning. I don't know what that amount looks like. So that's a question that I'm just curious of, because yeah, it's a few dollars if you only make $25,000 a year, but if you up there, I have no clue.
But this is the premium, paying the premium.
Right, because they don't pay our disability insurance.
Hmm?
No, they don't.
Say what now?
Short-term, long-term disability?
No, you pay a portion.
Yeah, it's not 100%.
It's not 100%.
Yeah, the employers typically don't pay the full amount. They pay full?
Yeah.
They pay,
I will tell you that my contract says that the city shall pay for a long-term disability policy that will pay Ms. Nguyen 60% of her then current compensation.
And that needs to be clarified. Is he asking for short-term or long-term? Because
Probably both. I can clarify it with him, though.
now, I guess, Ms. Lanier, you're right. Most companies do pay a premium on your long-term, but short-term, up to 6 months, that's usually that's a plan that you opt into. That's a voluntary plan. So I definitely want to know if we can find out, is he speaking of short-term or long-term, and then what those rates are for short-term disability and also long-term.
I will ask him to clarify whether it's short and long-term disability, and we'll have to, the city manager and I will have to ask risk management regarding the rates.
all right. Anyone else have any concerns with this Section 11? It will be coming back with the items that we just spoke of, but is there anything else that you would like to add or have taken out for this Section 11? Mr. Lawson?
I agree with Councilman McCoy in regards to just kind of defining exactly what we're paying for the section.
All right. Ms. Lanier?
I'm fine with the copay coming out.
What about going and checking, she's going to check on the short-term and long-term to clarify, so that part is okay as well. All right, Botel.
I'm okay with whatever. I'd like to hear what she comes back with.
Okay, and I will hear what you have when you come back as well for Section 11. All right, Section 12, retirement. Upon the execution of the agreement, the city agrees to pay deferred compensation in an amount equal to 18% of the city manager's salary. Said deferred compensation shall be paid to the manager's designated retirement fund chosen by the city manager. The deferred compensation retirement program shall not exceed the limit established by federal statute and/or regulation. Such payments shall be payable in installments at the same time as other retirement benefits are paid for other employees of the city. The city manager is required to participate in the FRS. Mr. Sherman, you probably want to come over for this as well, but this part here, Ms. Nguyen, can you explain to the council what he would like to do with this one versus what has been done in the past for others?
I believe that what's standard, and Mr. Sherman can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the city has a deferred compensation plan that is a 457 plan. Mr. Evans does not want to participate in the 457 plan. He wants to have his own brokerage money market investment account, I believe. When I spoke to him last night, he said that he wanted to have a 401A and that he has had that in the past in other contracts so that he knows that it is permissible. I spoke with the pension attorneys who also have said that it's permissible. So it would be 18% deposited in a 401A upon execution of the agreement or at the start of the contract, which I think it should say at the start, at his start date. He wants an amount equal to 18% of his salary deposited into a retirement fund.
And he would be taxed on that.
He understands that he would be taxed on that. It's not really deferred compensation, which is pre-tax. And so I will massage this language, but that's what he's requesting.
And the difference in this language is what, just that it's a 450, not a 457? This is typically in contracts, it's just not usually in a 401A, it goes into a 457 typically.
That's the difference, and the other difference is that this is upfront. The 18% would be upon the start date versus, most of us, it's every pay period, it goes into your account.
Okay.
Madam
All right.
Chair?
Yes.
So just to be clear, that 18% just comes off of his salary. It's not in addition to his salary, correct?
That is in
No.
addition to.
In addition to.
And that's with everyone typically? It's always in addition to?
Yes.
So,
And when we say everyone, we're talking about contract
Right,
employees.
contracted.
Mr. Evans and myself, it's in addition to.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Lawson?
And it's not 18%. It's just, for instance, I don't have 18%, but that's what he's asking.
Okay.
So in addition to his salary, he's asking for 18% deposited into a money market account that he's determined. So now it's an additional 18% plus the 220 he's asking for to go into a separate account.
That's correct.
And in salary, contracted employees, the standard, Attorney Nguyen, if you could disclose yours?
The 457 plan has a maximum amount required by law. That's where the language that you see in here about not exceeding the federal statute.
Yes, ma'am.
Mine is the maximum plus any catch-up. I don't know what the catch-up provision is, and the catch-up provision is based on my age. He would not be entitled to a catch-up if he went with the 457 plan that is standard and usual, he would get $19,000 into a 457 plan. He's not entitled to the catch-up because he's not over a certain age.
And your percent was what?
I don't know my catch-up provision. I did call the Nationwide representative, and she's on vacation until Monday, but I will find that out.
Madam Chair?
Hold on, Mr. Lawson.
So yes, at that current salary, 18% would be about almost $40,000 that we'd be looking to add into a money market from him, paid on top of his salary, paid by the city. I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Mr. Sherman?
You're clear. That's correct.
Can I,
All right,
can I
Mr.
follow
Lawson?
up to that?
Just to be clear, I can't agree with that.
Okay, did you have any suggestions on,
I would go with the standard language that we have in our other contracted employee, that Attorney Nguyen negotiated into her contract.
well,
But
hers
then
is
at
a
the
little
same-
different though, right? Ms.
Hers is a
Nguyen?
457, I believe she said.
Mine is pre-tax.
Pre-tax.
457, which all the other employees are entitled to enroll in should they want to.
But is the issue what it's being put into, or is it the percent?
It's the percentage of 18% on top of his salary put into a separate
But
account.
you're okay with him opening up his 401A?
Yeah, wherever he
or
wants
the
to put
four-
his, I'm okay with that.
Okay, but
That's not
it's the
issue.
percentage more so, that's what.
Based
that's
on
your
his
concern.
salary, because we're negotiating based on a salary of 220. So that's where my issue is.
Okay,
Madam Chair?
hold on, I think McCoy and then Lanier.
Well, she was first.
Okay, go ahead.
I'd like to, I do have a problem with the 18% as well.
Okay.
We can, I can make a suggestion of 10, 12, but the 18 is a bit much.
Okay. Mr. McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Councilwoman Lanier, and also Councilman Lawson. That's exactly my contention and my reservation. Not only is it too much money based on the 220, but if you look closely, he's asking for this upon execution of the agreement. So we're dropping another 40 grand right off the bat. I mean, you still want to give him the sun, moon, and stars, but it's not going to happen here. I mean, that's just like so fiscally irresponsible, because there is nothing in this language that says if this guy gets a job in 9 months and he takes off, he's got $39,600 in a deferred compensation plan. Then he also has $52,000 in a Florida retirement plan. Now, my question is, Mr. Sherman, and just based on number 12, it says upon execution of the agreement, and I think we've all established that's probably going to be upon first day of employment. But are we able to add a lump sum into a FRS on behalf of an employee or on behalf of a select service manager at the beginning of their employment under FRS?
We wouldn't do that. Not an FRS.
No, you mean pay it to the FRS?
Correct, because that's what that paragraph starts off with.
No. No, that's what the paragraph ends with. But that, I mean, the way I read this, and again, I haven't spoken to him, is you're going to take 18%, you're going to give that, and I'll direct you where that money is going to go, whatever account, and we then pay the FRS payments, which we pay every pay cycle. That's the way I read that.
Okay.
So you're right. It's $39,600. He'll tell us where he wants that directed. He clearly has account somewhere that he wants that directed to, and then he has to be a member of the FRS.
He has to be, but there's no lump sum payment.
There's no lump sum. No, we pay that every payroll cycle.
And I think I heard you correct this morning. That's the select service manager class of 24.7.
I think it's 2406 or something like that.
Okay, 24%
Yeah.
of his salary goes into FRS, roughly about $52,000.
Correct.
On top of, we're going to drop $40,000 on him on day one in just this retirement, in a different retirement account.
In a different retirement account.
And this is why it's important that we discuss the salary, so I don't agree with anything in that section.
Now, and if I could add one thing, if we go back to the standard language, the 457 cap at his age bracket is about, I believe it's 19,000, which is a little less than the 10% that was, suggested, but it's right in that ballpark. So again, if you wanted to go back to that language that was in his prior contract, we did do the 457 up to the maximum, and I believe the 2019 maximum is 19,000.
Madam Chair.
Hold on, Mr. McCoy, are you done?
So the 19,000 was in the contract from 2017?
17, yeah, right.
And we contributed to the 457?
Correct.
Okay. And there was no pro rata return of that, right? Once it's in, right?
Correct, because again, it was paid, as Ms. Wynn said, it was paid per payroll period. So we took the 19,000, divided it by 26 pay periods, and that's what we paid every pay period.
But that's not what we're asking for here.
That's not what's being asked for here.
So
correct.
he's basically asking for double the money, and then he wants it up front.
That's the way I read that.
That's it, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I know this is going to come as a shock to Councilperson McCoy, but I think I want to be as fiscally responsible as he is and ask that the attorney negotiate this number down to a more reasonable number. I think I agree with Councilperson Lanier that we could probably get this down to more like 10%. But I don't want
Dr. Votel, I can't.
I'm sorry. I was saying that I would like to ask the attorney to negotiate this number with Mr. Evans.
Can the council give me some guidance?
Yeah, we need a number.
A percentage.
A percentage, and then we can.
Or a number.
Ms. McCoy, did you have something?
It's hard to give you a number because everything's
Predicated on the other
predicated on the salary, correct?
Okay.
Well,
And
Well, the thing is.
it's predicated, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It's predicated on the salary now. It doesn't mean that that's how the council has to do it. You could say $20,000 or whatever it is you want to say. and it won't be predicated on the salary, and it would read, for instance, upon the start date, the city agrees to pay deferred compensation in an amount of $20,000 in a 401A of the city manager's choosing. It's totally up to council,
Madam
what
Chair?
you want me to take back to him.
Ms. Lanier, Councilwoman Lanier.
I initially said the 10 to 12%, and that's what my suggestion is for negotiation.
Okay. What about the part where it's up front? Are you all okay with the upfront, or you're looking for the per pay?
Madam Chair, I'm looking for the per pay period, the way they did it before. They broke it out into 12 periods,
Okay.
12 increments, and then
26 paychecks.
20,
Right.
there you go.
All right. Anyone else want to add to that? Ms. Councilwoman Lanier saying between 10 and 12% and make it per pay. Any other guidance regarding?
I can't support that because I think she's negotiating from the position of 220. So even still, that puts us at $22,000, way ahead of what he gotten in 2017.
So if you said the salary would be 50,000, is that going to change your percent?
Absolutely. Definitely. Because, here's what, again, members, and I hate to belabor this and repeat this, but I've already calculated at $380,000 that bringing Mr. Evans is going to cost us. That's give or take, 5,000 or 6,000 here and there, but $380,000, and there's a significant amount that's going to be up front. I'm talking about close to 60 grand. If you're talking about putting 36,000 putting 40,000 in an account for him, plus car allowance, plus relocation, plus vacation days, plus 6 days, that's almost $70,000 he's going to have in the first week of him being employed here. Now,
But I think with some of those that you just mentioned, I think we all sort of kind of agreed to not do upfront for some of those. Not all of them, but some of them we have agreed.
but even still, even if we advance him the sick days, he has the option of taking them. If we give him the vacation, he has the option of taking them right away. So,
Well, she's coming back with it.
right, but I'm putting you in the perspective of financially what this whole thing looks like, and it's all hinged on that 220.
Right, I understand, but what I'm saying is some of those items, all of us somewhat agreed to not make it up front. So some of those are coming back. So it sounds like we're downsizing the amount of items that are up front. And we can do the same thing for this one too. This one does not have to be up front. Like Ms. Lanier's suggestion was to do the 10 to 12%, but do it per pay, not up front. So the upfront part, I think we need to look at it two separate. Let's answer the question, are we okay with doing it up front, or we want to do it per pay? I don't think that would matter with how much you're paying them, right? You're okay, I mean, we can make that decision whether we want it per pay or all up front tonight. We could say that part.
Yeah.
So, and then the percentage part is the part that we would still work out.
It's not that simple for me. I'm sorry.
But the
I
per pay
understand.
one?
Well,
and the
because
upfront?
when I went and did a pro forma and I did all of these numbers, it was
Mhm.
based on 220. If we are at 185, 190, anything less than 200, I'm more inclined to say, yeah, perhaps he could be entitled to $15,000 up front into his contribution. If I knew what the grand totality of how these how these numbers were present value.
Okay. So how do we get to that point?
Well,
How are you suggesting we get there? To be able to have that luxury of, you want her to identify the salary first before any of the other things are.
That would have been ideal, but I don't want to hold us up right now. I think we should probably continue moving at the pace where we're at, and we'll see what you can go back with as far as the salary. But clearly, this is why, this is why I'm glad that we had an opportunity to discuss this, because there's a lot coming out that I don't think is on its surface.
And that I want everyone to be very clear, that is why I asked for it.
Thank
The
you.
special meeting, because I could have gone forward without. And then we would have gotten here, and then everybody would be like, but at that point, we would have closed not close the deal, but I mean, negotiations would have pretty much been over. And at that point, it just would have been a yes or no vote. So that is exactly why I asked for this meeting, because I knew there were some things that some people may have had issues with. I knew you all enough to know that much. I didn't know how far you all would go on things, but I knew it was best to bring it, okay?
Good plan.
So that's why we're here, and we will figure this out.
Yes.
So section 12, it's a little up in the air. I still would like to know where we are, some of you are, if you can make a determination tonight, whether you're somewhat with the per pay, or if you're not, if you're okay with the upfront, or if you're okay with the per pay, if you can make that determination tonight, and then also if you had a percentage, if you were okay with being able to make that determination tonight. Mr. McCoy, he's made it clear he can't go either way on either one of them. Ms. Lanier, 10 to 12% per pay, if that still stands.
Yes.
Mr. Lawson, I know you got an issue with the percent. Did you?
I'd be okay with the percent going down to that 10 to 12% per pay.
Okay, per pay.
Based on the 220?
Well, we're not gonna, I won't lock you all in. Well, for this juncture right now,
Based on the 20?
based on 220, just knowing that we will modify.
No, because I'm looking at 180, so y'all go with the 220. Just put it on record that I'm closer to 180 to 190.
Okay, well, that's good to know. I will put that by your name now. All right, because we didn't, you said not over 200, so now you're
Yeah,
at
not over
180. Okay.
Well, if that's the case, let's go 150. Tell him my ask is 150.
All right, Mr. McCoy. All right.
Well, or would you like-
Between 200, 180, 150.
Can I do the second round of negotiations? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
We might not have anybody. We might have Mr. McCoy being the city manager at the end of that. But we appreciate your due diligence, and that's why you're here on the desk, so we appreciate that. All right, what was your decision on?
Same with Shirley.
Okay.
I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry, I'm fine with the 10 to 12%
Per pay period. Thank you.
I will put myself there.
Okay, I'll be there, Madam Chair.
Oh,
There you go.
there. So we're all at the 10 to 12. I'm going to get him to negotiate for me on something. Everybody is pretty much with the 10 to 12 per pay. Is that right? Yes, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so that will come back, and we'll look between 10 to 12 and per pay. All right, Section 13, termination by the city, severance pay, and name clearing hearing.
Section 13 is standard until you get to paragraph D for the name clearing.
Okay, so let's look at Section 13. Well, I mean, you all can look through the ABC, but that is standard. Where is C?
Page 6, top of page 6.
And then looking at D, name clearing hearing. So with this section here, Madam Attorney, can you explain this part?
Mr. Evans requested that should the city council, a majority of the city council vote to terminate his services with cause, then he would have 10 days to ask for a name clearing hearing. I don't yet know the procedure for that. I have to look into that, but that is what he has requested.
And then within 20 days of receiving the city manager's request for a name clearing hearing, city council must provide the city manager an opportunity to be heard at a public meeting. So that speaks to part of what the process would be for the name clearing hearing.
I don't know if it's just an opportunity for him to come and make a statement so that the public hears everything. I don't know.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Could I ask ask him that it not be called a name clearing hearing, but perhaps a
Due process?
Due process hearing, yeah, something that reflects more accurately what it really would be. I think it sounds to me as if he just wants an opportunity. If he's fired with cause, he simply wants the ability to come back and say, hey, this is my side of the story.
What if we called it a public hearing instead of a due
Yeah,
process
public hearing, yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Because due process hearing, if we
Right,
say
you're
something
right,
like
you're
that,
right.
now we got a 14th Amendment
You're right. You're right.
violation.
Public
and-
hearing.
Whew.
Public hearing, you're right.
All right.
Okay.
I'll take that back.
Now, Okay. Ms. Evans will be in, okay. Forced to resign with or without cause. Okay, so she'll take this part back and get the clarification on that part. Everybody's okay with that? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes.
McCoy?
Yes.
All right, section 14, termination by the city manager. Is this standard?
Yes.
All of this? I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
14.
Yes.
Anyone have any issue with 14? Everybody good with 14?
Yes.
Lawson, McCoy, Botel?
Yes.
I really haven't read this. But it is standard, right?
Yes.
Okay.
It basically says that within 60 days, he can decide to resign, if you will, and that he will not receive any severance if that happens. But that any compensation, including sick, vacation, personal time off that he has accrued, he would be entitled to cash out, and that's standard. And that will have no further, the city will have no further financial obligation to him. And that he still will, of course, receive the money earned in the 401A brokerage account that he sets up, retirement program.
Okay, anyone have any comments on 14? All right, Ms. McCoy, you're good with 14?
Yeah, but do we need to put that pro rata thing, or is that already covered in the other?
It'll be
sections?
covered in the other.
Okay. Good.
And we can reference it here if you like.
Okay. Is that what you all want? The reference in there?
I don't matter, it doesn't matter to me either way. It's
Okay.
already stated previously, so that's fine with me.
Okay.
Botel? All right, I'm fine.
So we'll leave it as is.
Yeah, 14 stays as is. All right, section 15, residency, this standard.
Yes, it is.
All right, any issues with
I
that?
do have an issue with it.
Yes.
I was hoping maybe we could require him to live in 1555 Dr. MLK Boulevard.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll ask him.
Okay.
All right, you gonna get something over there too?
Yeah.
All right. All right, standard, section 15.
It's standard.
All
That
right.
was a joke,
That was
right?
Stony Brook, if no one understood what that
okay.
meant.
You didn't get it.
All right.
And you know what? I really believe if it was down to it, I believe he would go out there just to. I believe he
I'm
would.
sure he will.
I believe he would.
I believe he will too. Section 15 will stay as is. Section 16, disability.
Standard.
Everybody good with 16? Yep. Yes, no?
Yes.
Mr. McCoy?
Yes.
All right, 17, indemnification. Standard?
Standard.
Everybody good with 17A, 17B? Yes, no?
Yes.
McCoy, Lanier?
I'm sorry, where we at, 17A or B?
Both. They're both standard.
This last statement on, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes.
This last statement on A that says, in such instance, the city manager shall reimburse the city for any legal fees and expenses the city has incurred or otherwise paid for or on her behalf in connection with the charged conduct.
That part, Ms. Nguyen?
Right. If he is found to be liable for acting outside the course and scope of his employment, then, and we have defended him, he will reimburse us those attorney's fees and costs because he was not acting within the course and scope of his employment.
So did the last previous council person reimburse the city?
This is the city manager's, there wasn't a contract.
Okay.
All right, but we'll change that from saying her to his.
Yes, I have made
All
that
right.
change. Thank
So
you.
standard A and B, everybody's good?
Yes.
All right, section 18, bonding.
Standard.
Standard, everybody good?
Yep.
Yes, no?
Yep.
Yes.
Lawson, McCoy?
Yes.
Yes, I just didn't know we provided bonding. We pay for bonding for that, right?
It's like a handful of employees that you cover.
Okay.
Yes?
Yes.
All right, section 18 will stay as is. Section 19, code of ethics.
Standard.
Standard?
Yes.
McCoy, Lawson?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, Section 19 will stay as is. Section 20, attorney's fees.
This section is not standard. This section says that if there's any litigation in respect to the settlement agreement, the prior settlement agreement, that the city will defend the city manager and pay his attorney's fees and costs.
All right, so where are we with this?
If there's any other litigation outside of that, each party will bear their own attorney's fees and costs, meaning he would pay his and the city would pay theirs.
Outside of what?
Anything,
Settlement
any
agreement.
litigation that might ensue outside of the settlement agreement, correct?
All right,
I'm okay with this.
I'm okay with section 20.
McCoy, Lawson? Being that we all voted to accept, to make the amendment, knowing there was some litigation threats that were put out there, this part here is saying we will defend them if that should arise.
Yes. Just one question, Madam Attorney. I believe when this first happened, it was stated that there were 2 claims that Mr. Evans sought against the city. I can remember the Grafenright saying it, but I don't remember verbatim what it was. It was like a 501 claim or some numerical claim that's recognized under federal law and then also related to due process rights. So I don't have a problem with supporting it, but I think I want to be inclusive to include whatever claim that was, because there was 2 claims that he initiated.
I'll look
Are you
into it. I'm
familiar
not
with-
familiar. No, I'm not. I'll look into it.
Okay.
And
But
I'll
yes,
report
I
back.
agree with that.
20?
With the EEOC claim.
Yeah, it was. I believe it may have been an EOC.
I don't really recall. All right, so she'll check into that, but.
Yeah,
that-
I'm good with that.
Okay, Mr. Lawson?
Yes.
All right, so section 20 we will keep. Section 21, the relocation expenses upon execution of this agreement, but of course I don't know, you can tell me about, should that stay about the execution or wait till you can't wait till the start date. The city agrees to make a one-time lump sum payment of up to $10,000 for the purpose of relocating to the city. Initially, he asked the $13,000, and I brought the 10 down to talk with the board. Last time he had 7,000, I think it was. And he wants it up front, right?
Correct.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I recommend 8,500.
Okay, hold on. Section 21. What about the upfront? Most of them, I think,
That's
are
fine.
upfront. All right, anyone else?
I'll find the way it is.
I'm just curious, Mr. Sherman, is this taxable? Because this is different than an allowance, so how would that be treated?
The answer is yes, it would be taxable. And the last time we did pay it up front, so we could pay the moving company, but yes, it would be taxable.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
So if it is taxable, that means that that's probably, it'll take a hit on that amount of money. So I would withdraw that and keep it at the 10, since it'll be taxable monies.
Okay. All right, Mr. McCoy, what were you saying?
I support that. Leaving it at 10.
Um,
Well, hold on, I'm sorry. Are we giving him 10? Or, okay, this says, let's see, there's a second page to this, so should he be terminated?
Within 30 days.
Whether he
then
leaves
would have to-
voluntarily or involuntarily,
Okay,
prior to a year of service, he will reimburse the city the amount, the 10,000.
okay, I'm fine with that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
was this the same language in the previous contract, just at 7,000?
Correct.
Was that included in the settlement negotiation previously? Because if it's the same language, that means the 7,000 would have been returned or refunded to the city. Was that included in the settlement at all, or?
I've been told that it was not, I wasn't a part of the settlement, but I've been told that it was not.
Okay, so this agreement says that he'll return it within termination, whether it's with cause or without cause. Last time it had the same language, but he didn't return it last time.
I don't think, I'm assuming nobody asked for it. Did we ask for it, Mr. Sherman? Okay.
Oh, well.
So he already had 7,000 then so he already had 7,000 for relocation that he never paid back, and now he wants an additional 10 up front to move again?
Yeah, that's what it is. That's what it says.
Madam Chair.
Hold on. Mr. Lawson?
So I'm just trying to understand that if it wasn't discussed in the settlement and we have a termination clause that says 10,000 refunded and we didn't collect it last time, then what is going to hold us to actually committing to this? Because if we didn't collect it last time, why is it even written in here if we're not following up with what our contract says?
Well, being that I was on the council, I would assume that with all that was going on, no one, because they went back and forth in terms of whether they were going to give him a settlement, whether he was going to, go to court, if they were going to go to court. And I can only assume that because of all of the stuff that was going on, no one went that route to recoup the money. That's the only thing I can assume. It never came up to the council, I can tell you that. It was never an item that we discussed. But that's the only thing. He just wasn't held to it because the council who terminated him did not, I think, I would be speaking out of turn, but I guess because they fired him and he was gone, they weren't worried about getting the money back. I'm just assuming, but that's, because it never came up. No one ever asked a question about it.
Madam Chair.
Wait a minute, Mr. Lawson, you're done, or no?
Yeah, essentially, I was just asking the question in reference to this, just because of the language that's here.
Mhm.
I'm okay because it is taxable money and it's required. It's standard from what I've received across different municipalities in regards to relocation. It's just the verbiage and what happened last time, just making sure that we're monitoring what's happening. So.
Yeah, well, that would be for us to do. The previous council did not
Correct.
reinforce it.
Okay, yeah, I'm okay with it. Madam Chair.
Yes.
It was a global settlement agreement. I'm sure that if anyone thought about it, it would have been incorporated into that settlement agreement. So it's almost a moot point.
Okay. All right, Ms. Lanier, you said you were okay. McCoy, you were okay. Botel and Lawson, excuse me, myself, were okay. So we will keep section 21 as is. Section 22, consultant cost. This section here, as I can't remember if I mentioned this or explained it, but basically what it is if Ms. Jacobs would like to receive assistance from Mr. Evans, let me just go back. What he initially mentioned and what he initially said was to be reimbursed. Initially, it said the city will reimburse Mr. Evans any and all related expenses associated with traveling back and forth from Madeira Beach to Revere Beach as a result of the impending transition. And so Ms. Nguyen had some concerns that doing dual roles or being employed, I think you assumed that was being asked, explain your point, your concern you had.
I just wanted to bring to his attention and make sure that he was comfortable and that it wouldn't be considered dual office holding. And so based on that concern, we came up with this language. So in the event, I don't know how often he plans to come back and forth. I added the language referencing Florida statute because that sets out the amounts that are payable. The maximum amount that could be payable, and it would have to be approved by the interim city manager prior to him coming over or consulting with her here and being reimbursed.
So the approval would come through the interim city manager, That amount, does that fall up under her 25,000 PIN if it's under 25, or it'll come to us if it's, I mean, obviously, it's going to come to us if it's over 25, but if the initial, say it's 75,000 initially, it comes to us because it's over her 25,000 PIN, right?
I would think that he would expect to be reimbursed as he comes. So for instance, let's say 1 week he came from Wednesday to Friday or something like that, or the statute sets out that amount, it's $80 per day. If it exceeds that, then it's the $80, it's the meals, actual expenses, and mileage. So it's not going to be that amount.
Okay, so it's a set amount that it would be.
Well, it depends on where he stays and that sort of thing, but.
Right. All right, counsel?
Madam Chair, so that's like a per diem?
Correct.
Okay. I don't have any problem with that.
And that would be, in between the time now or when it's initiated, where he's able to assist Ms. Jacobs with the transition.
Yes.
Should she provide she needs some assistance on anything, it's up to her entirely.
Yes, as long as it's just a per diem, that's fine.
Okay. Mr. McCoy?
And does chapter 112 cover just per diem? Because,
Well, let's make sure it's travel per diem, hotel stay,
right, well,
Right.
transportation too, right?
mileage.
No, transportation too, right? Because, I mean, he could be getting the flight from Tampa to Palm Beach.
Right? The interim city manager would have to approve it.
I don't have a problem with, making sure that the transition goes good, but I just don't want us to get to a place and we've incurred $12,000 in expenses just because it's available and the option is there for him to do it with the cost being covered. So I know 112, and if I can remember correctly, 112 covers and it provides for airfare, it provides for per diem, and also the state rate of mileage. So
would you be comfortable with it being approved by us? Because that language we could change, instead of it being the interim city manager approving it, or what do you?
Logistically, he'd have to wait for a council meeting. Well, you could put a cap on it. I mean, you could set a cap that travel no more than X number of dollars. And when that's exceeded, it's over. That's just an idea. It's totally up to council.
Madam Chair, Mr. Sherman, how often do we do vendor paychecks? Is that twice a month? Weekly? Okay, well, my suggestion is let's put it on consent agenda for council approval. And unless somebody sees something that's eye-glaring or something like that, then at least we'll be getting to it within 2 weeks because we meet every 2 weeks. Is that fair, members?
And that would be
After he submit.
after he submitted.
So on a reimbursement basis.
And get the reimbursement. Ms. Nguyen, you
Right.
could word that.
It's on a reimbursement basis now,
Right.
the current language.
Right.
But it would come to the council instead of the interim city manager. Correct?
Well, I'm asking her to put it on the agenda. Mr. Sherman, does that sound fair?
Hold on, Ms. Lanier.
I'm done.
No, did you get your question answered? What,
You said that's fair.
to come on, what was the
Well,
question?
that if a receipt is submitted, a matter to the city manager, then the process of us cutting checks every week, that reimbursement would be in the next week of vendor payroll checks.
Yeah, if you vote on it on a Wednesday night, we can have it paid by Friday. My only second thought is if we're not allowing new items to be brought in, that means it's already waited, 7 to 10 days.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say the same thing.
But he could essentially submit it, it just won't, he would submit it by
right.
the deadline. If he makes it by the deadline of whatever our cutoff is for Novus, then it would be on that agenda. If not, it'd just be on the following
But
agenda.
that's my point. It's got to
Yeah, I mean, well, I wouldn't
Well-
limit ourselves as to how many days we say we're going to reimburse.
I'm sorry, and let me, forgive me, Madam City Manager, this is well within her signing authority. If she gives us a report about whatever, have some sort of synopsis that this is what they did, that should be good enough.
Okay,
So
so-
my apologies, I don't want to make more bureaucracy.
I don't think it's going to add up to, I mean, we're talking 65 days once you've agreed to the contract, so I don't think there's going to be that many trips back and forth.
Well,
And again, if we want to talk budgets or something,
Right,
we
and
can
that-
certainly do it over the phone. I
Right,
mean,
right.
it's-
A lot of it can be done over the phone, internet, Skype,
Right.
whatever. I don't foresee there being a whole lot of necessary travel.
Whatever it is, I want to make sure that our interim city manager has
whatever.
the support, and I don't want to limit her. So whatever she feels is necessary, if she can provide some sort of, not something so massive, but just some detailed report as to what, an agenda, if you will.
Okay, by email, or you want that on the council?
Just in her regular email
or
memo,
update? Okay.
in a regular memo to the board.
So
And
we're
then
leaving
that-
it as is,
So leave it.
Reimbursement, yeah.
as a reimbursement as
If
approved by
that's
the
okay
interim
by the
city
members.
manager.
Is it okay with, are you all okay with the way it's written?
I'm in
there
agreement with
now?
that.
I'm in
Madam
agreement
Chair.
with exactly how it is.
Sorry, interim manager, I'm almost forgetting you down there. You haven't said anything.
Hey, she said, we're not talking about her contract, so. All right, so section 22, we will keep as is. Section 23 is the general terms and conditions. Is this standard?
Yes, it is.
Okay, everyone good about that part? Yes, no?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. McCoy? Hey, okay, are you looking at F?
Yes.
Is this standard, though, you're saying? I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Is this standard?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
I believe it was in his last contract.
Yeah, but we set the standard. In Riviera Beach, there's nothing standard.
That is true.
I don't know what, and maybe someone can kind of clarify. Matter of fact, Mr. Eureka, I need to do my beneficiary paperwork tonight. But let me tell you what this says that's causing me some concerns, at least question. It says, upon city manager's death,
I knew it.
the city's obligation under this agreement shall terminate for the following, and the city agrees to. And the one that I'm looking at is payment of outstanding hospitalization, medical, and dental bills in accordance with the city's insurance policies or plans. We don't pay for his medical bills. That's already taken care of by the insurance company. So why would that even have our name in there?
Madam Chair.
Hold on 1 minute, Ms. Lawson.
We can remove it.
I mean, that's an insurance
I believe that
carrier.
it was the language that was in there before. I don't believe that this was changed at all.
In all, or just, you're saying in his or in all?
In his contract, I don't believe that language isn't in my contract.
I'm looking at, whose is this? Ruth Jones's, hers says the same thing. Payment of all outstanding hospitalization, medical, and dental bills in accordance with the city's insurance policies or plans.
It's standard for a city manager in
But-
Riviera Beach, yes.
But we've had some challenges with insurance. I use that word.
Yeah.
I don't want an insurance company asking us to pay for something that may not be in the routine and normal course of us doing business. That's why we chose to get insurance. So unless you're going to give me some other reason why we would possibly, in the unlikely event, pay for someone's hospital bill or even insurance benefits after they die, it shouldn't even be in the contract.
Okay. So what do you want?
Because,
Take it out, or you want her to look into it a little more, or?
Yeah, we have to, because, there's been some kind of suggestion that there may be other members of the family that may be carried as dependents. So I want to know what that clarification is. So are we continuing to pay life insurance benefits for a spouse or dependents? Or, I just want to know, because really, once we buy insurance, we have the city, and that's the other reason why I don't want the copay part in there. I don't want us to be obligated to
Right.
paying copays and anything beyond us paying the premium.
I guess the city manager and I can ask risk management to give us the implications of section 23F, 1 through 4,
Okay.
or the number 3. or 3 and 4? You have to give me some direction, please.
Madam Chair.
Hold on, McCoy?
Yeah, that's it. I don't know what.
3 and 4?
Yes, 3 and 4.
Just 3 and 4?
Well, number 2, I don't know who we would pay accrued balances to in accordance with this agreement if he's deceased.
It's beneficiaries. That's usually what happens.
Well,
If it's a
okay.
spouse, if whoever it is, if, you know, or into his estate, it belongs to him.
Okay, I get that.
So
Okay.
3 and 4? F 3 and 4?
Yes, ma'am.
Councilwoman Botel?
Does it not? Well, I guess if the language could be just corrected, because I think the implication here might be that it would be up to the insurer. I mean, it says in accordance with city's insurance policies or plans. So I think perhaps it's just that the language has to be changed to ensure that it's not that the city is going to be paying outstanding hospitalization, medical and dental bills, but rather that we would ensure that the insurance company pays them. So perhaps that language could just be clarified to make that obvious.
I would like to consult with risk management because they're the experts in insurance,
sure,
please.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else we would bring, she's going to get more information on section 23F, numbers 3 and 4. Anyone else have any concerns about anything else outside of that? Everybody good with that, with her doing more research for 3, 4, section 23F? Lawson, Lanier, McCoy,
Yes.
Botel. All
Good.
right. And that
We have,
completes it.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
2 additional issues.
Yes.
That I discussed with Mr. Evans last night, and you may recall, he wanted the language, which is similar in my contract, which is in my contract, that in the event he's terminated, he wants to be placed in a regularly established position with substantially comparable compensation and benefits.
Oh, that one
You
goes
had that
up
conversation
into-
with him?
Yeah, that goes into, where would that fit in at? Is that the B or, section 1B or somewhere in section 2? 2 or 1? Where are we talking about putting that?
We would put it in section 1.
Okay.
Probably
So-
as a ABC, if, you know,
Okay,
if the
so-
council directs me to do that. The conversation, if you recall, that we had, and he understood, was that it might be logistically difficult to take a city manager and put them in a department head or assistant city manager position. And I believe you said that he offered up perhaps a position in the CRA. So I don't know what the pleasure of the council is. That's why I did not draft that language.
Now, this kind of ties in with the guarantee.
Which we don't have that language yet.
Right.
Correct.
So this part ties in with the guarantee as well.
I don't know that we have to, if you will, because the
Mhm.
hour is late, that we have to decide that tonight, because we are still waiting on the guarantee language, and then we could draft something, talk to him, negotiate with him on it and bring it back. I just wanted you all to know that that was an issue that he raised.
Okay.
The other issue is that, and this is my advice to council, you can do what you will with it. I did speak with him about it. We are all aware that threats of litigation involving the amendment to the settlement agreement have been made. I discussed with Mr. Evans the possibility of litigation as a result from that. And in the event that a court might rule, I can't tell you whether it would or not, he and I just talked about what he and I call the worst-case scenario, that the city could not hire him, that he assumed the risk from that, and that he would waive and release us from any and all liability. He wanted to run that by his attorney. That would be my recommendation to the council to protect the city, but it's totally up to you regarding what you want to do as it relates to that.
And so that's if the judge makes a ruling that we cannot hire him.
Right. That he acknowledges the risk associated with a possible lawsuit
Madam
in
Chair.
that regard as it relates to the amended settlement agreement.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Lawson.
Okay, so in regards to releasing liability and risk, that release, the upfront money that he's asking for, which would be the deferred compensation, vacation, sick, and moving costs, what would happen with all those funds in the event that a judge does reverse the option of hiring him? Because if this does go to litigation, if they do reverse our option of bringing him in here, he signs his contract next week, what is going to happen to that upfront money if he's already been here and the judge says that we can no longer have hired him?
It's up to the council. You tell me what you want to write in here, and that's what we hope would happen. Again, if litigation ensues, you never know how it's interpreted. But that's totally up to the council on how you want to. I would suggest you think about it. Provide me with some suggestions later. You can email me, you can call me, and we can bring it back. It's a heavy issue to deal with right now at this late hour, but it's something that I think you all should consider.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, well, considering that he's going to sign it, well, hopefully provide language with liability, assuming liability and risk, my recommendation would be to have those upfront money reimbursed outside of the relocation, which would include the vacation. Well, it depends on what we can negotiate with him, because I know we talked about changing the language for vacation and sick, deferred compensation. So it depends on what we come to a final agreement with. But outside of relocation, I would see that everything else should be refunded to us outside of his regular pay if it is overruled. Hopefully, that won't happen, but just worst case scenario for the city.
All right, Miss. Anyone else?
I mean, you wouldn't want him to refund the contribution to the retirement account, correct? Or anything that's based on accruals, correct?
No, anything's based on accruals, no. We would definitely just want any upfront money. Well, the only thing that would be left that we kind of went back on, the moving costs, I would be okay with that, because then at that time he would have already spent the time and the money to move. But the deferred compensation, I think we're trying to change that from upfront to accrual, and vacation and sick. So we're trying to change that as well. So I'm not sure depends on what we negotiate now. But if we do negotiate that we're going to give him any upfront money, we would want that refunded. Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else?
No, I disagree with that. I can't really, it's a lot.
So do you want to provide her with something or think about it?
I
in
need
the
to think about it.
Okay, so, all right, Mr. McCoy.
I think that's it, Madam Chair. Let me just review my notes. Can you circle back
Yeah.
to me, please?
But with this item here, think about if you want to get with her in between time, or if you have something you want to add tonight. Votel,
It's 2 minutes till tomorrow.
you want to get with her on it? Okay. And I will speak with you as well on this item.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Last question. I know he's coming back with the language in regards to placement to a department, but I don't think we have any departments that would be comparable to that salary or near that salary. So we need to really be mindful of that language of what he wants to come back and be placed into another department.
You could create a position.
We're being asked too much right now.
Okay.
I mean, Madam Attorney?
Yes?
I'm interested in being city manager. Can you create a position for me? I'll take the 179. I mean, why
Yeah,
not?
it is getting late.
Yeah, that's too much.
So you're going to get with her regarding
I am.
this section. All right, anyone have any last comments? I think we have commented ourselves out tonight. But if you have any last words that are pressing, just keep in mind that all of the items that we've raised that we will bring back, Ms. Nguyen and myself will work through this, get it to Mr. Evans. You will be notified, as well as the public will be notified, if we are indeed having a meeting on Friday. I'm almost certain that we will not be having a meeting based on the number of changes that we or items that we're having to take a look at, because we have to look at it and go back to him, and then they're going to have to come back. So more than likely, the meeting on Friday probably will be canceled, and we more than likely probably will be looking at Wednesday, maybe. But again, all of that will be noticed. It will be added to the meeting that we already have, because I think our regular meeting agenda is not as long for Wednesday, so we will have the flexibility of just adding it to that agenda without having to call a special meeting unless it's beyond Wednesday, All right, if there are no further comments, this meeting stands adjourned. We finished?